Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett, also your Viceroy of Verisimilitude and your Master of Fun and Wonder, here for the John Campea Show on a Saturday night, and I am doing a companion video. John did an epic stream today about WandaVision, and once again, he's asked me to come in and to help him out and answer some questions. And by the way, he sent me 85 pages of questions. So, you know what? All I can do is jump right into it. And Captain J10 sends in a super chat and says, when Vision wakes up his coworker, it gave me Get Out vibes. It did. I think it's exactly what it gave me. It was a little scary. Please help me. It was scary. Isaiah Campbell sent in a super chat and says, maybe far-fetched, but do you think Agnes let the dog eat the bushes on purpose in the hopes that Wanda kicks her out like Monica? Ooh, that's dark. I don't think so. I think that was actually a callback to something that actually happened to Vision's dog Sparky in the comics. So I'd like to think no, because I'm a dog lover. I don't like it when people kill dogs, ever. Gabe Campbell sends in a super chat and says, any chance we see the full scene of Wanda getting Vision's body? I don't know. I don't know about that. Maybe not. You never know. This show, all bets are off. Curtis Lopez sends in a $4.99 super chat and says, you can't control me like the rest of them, Wanda. Can't I? And she decides to end the conversation by starting the end credits. Chills. I loved that moment. How creative and fun. Mista47 sent in a very generous super chat. I know you didn't want none of this multiverse action, but damn it, the amount of crowd-pleasing and fan service we're about to receive is just too enticing to turn down. We need some joy in our lives, especially with such a dry year for Marvel 2020. Well, Mr. 47, I agree with you. You know, a lot of people, it was really interesting seeing the reactions in the beginning where people are like, they watch the first two episodes and like, this didn't work for me and I don't understand what's going on, because it wasn't exactly what they expected. And I admit, the first two episodes, even into episode 3, it was a slow burn. But I think the more that is revealed, the better the show is getting. And I think without that setup, without that, like, people are either perplexed or they're in on the joke or they're trying to figure it out. I mean, when was the last time something was so intriguing to the entire community? I thought it was pretty cool. Curtis Lopez sends in another super chat and says, Wanda's "Can't I" was the same tone as her "You will" in Endgame. Oh, I'm all for it. The way she's playing with her character's accent. This show is so well thought out. I mean, it's so much fun to watch. Curtis Lopez also goes on to say, I know they said the Fantastic Four won't be appearing, but I'm thinking the aerospace engineer Monica refers to might be Reed Richards. You know what? I don't put anything past anyone on this show. Honestly, I really don't. Jack Wolf sends in a super chat and says, so one question I have is, how do Jimmy and Monica know what happened at the battle in Endgame if they weren't there? Oh, I'm sure that this is all public knowledge, because I would have to imagine it's the biggest news story in, well, all of human history. So I'm sure all of that information was given out, because there's going to be a lot of confused folks. So coming back from the snapping, from the blip, wondering, what the hell? So I'm sure the Avengers did all they could with the best press agents in the world to get out the information to everyone. Jonathan Wright sends in a super chat and says, promos for episodes 5 and 6 earlier this week said both would air next Friday, i.e. today, yet only episode 5 came out. Should we be expecting episode 6 later today, or was this a marketing error? No, I think that they probably, I mean, I don't know if it was an error or not. Maybe it was, I guess. I didn't see that, but they've said they're going to release the episodes one a week after the first two. So maybe it was an error. I didn't see it, but I guess that's what it would be. Kay sends in a super chat and says, dead Vision body reanimated, X-Men Marvel crossover so soon. All bets are off. All bets are off, Kay. You never know what this show's going to do. This is one of 4. Levi R. says, hey, John, do you think it could be Chiwetel Ejiofor? He would tie into Doctor Strange nicely. He studied black magic and the mystical arts. I've heard that, and I'm thinking maybe. Levi goes on to say he can manipulate magical forces for a variety of effects, including hypnotism, mesmerism, thought casting, and illusion casting. Separate his astral form from his body, allowing him to become intangible and invisible to most beings. Teleport interdimensionally and can manipulate many forms of magical energy. These are all very, very good points. Tap into extra-dimensional energy by invoking entities or objects of power existing in dimensions tangential to Earth's through the recitation of spells. You've got something there. There's definitely something there, and I saw a meme with this where it said "No more sorcerers," harking back to the House of M storyline, the "No more mutants" storyline, which I thought was really interesting. Vin Smoke Sanj sends in a super chat and says, one of two, when Jimmy Woo talks about Captain Marvel, Monica's reaction, "We are not talking about her," reminded me of Talos Fury said, "Do not invoke her name" in Far From Home. What happened between Carol and them since she left Earth for them seems to be pissed at her. Well, we don't know that. That definitely is another mystery the show sets up. So I think I like when they do that. That'll be something that might not even be paid off in the show. But we'll find out at some point. Jason Barney says, Agnes's line when the twins first age up, "Kids, can't control them, no matter how hard you try." Could this explain the lack of kids in Westview? It could. I honestly don't know. I don't know what's up with that. It's pretty crazy. Vin Smoke Sanj goes on to say, Asif Ali, the actor playing Norm, was amazing and creepy as hell in his scene. He was. Also, Bettany and Olsen in the couple's fight left me shaken and unsettled. The acting in this show is great. I mean, not only does Elizabeth Olsen nail what it's like to be a sitcom star in many different eras, the way she turns her character around on a dime is amazing, and Bettany's great too. I really hope they're both up for Oscars, and I would dare say Catherine Hahn. I mean, the acting in this show uniformly, maybe they'll get a SAG award. They're really, really good. JMeister25 says, so many moments of shock in this episode, and I must tip my hat to this episode's excellent use of silence. Sometimes silence is more effective. I totally agree. They're killing it. Vince Smoke Sanj sends in a super chat and says, one of two, having the 80s very important. X-Men Quicksilver showing up in the 80s. Told you, world of WandaVision makes a lot of sense, as he is from around that era in the movies. Love Darcy going, she recast Pietro? It made me choke on my drink. I know. I mean, it's both funny and yet correct. This show is so well written. I mean, it's truly, it is a wonder of fantasy television. It's truly amazing. Kay sends in another super chat and says, by the way, I'm new to your channel. Also, director Tyler is very suspicious. Just saying, yeah, but you know what? Maybe he genuinely is who he says he is, because nowadays in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we can't trust any leader. Maybe he just is the leader of S.W.O.R.D. Monica Rambeau has known him for a while, so maybe he is who he says he is, which might be surprising. Tim Duplessis sends in a super chat and says, hey, John, did you catch the difference in previously on she had to go home versus she did not belong here? You know what? I caught that, and you are the first person that's mentioned it. Even the recap is different, and they're playing with us. Good catch. Wanda even has control over Disney Plus. Yes, she does. K Major sends in a super chat. The director is suspicious AF. Agencies like S.W.O.R.D. want answers, and he just straight up tries to kill her and paint her as a villain. No containment. What are you going to do? She's very powerful. Who knows? I mean, we just don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Bob Ridge sends in a super chat and says, when's the last time a TV show dropped so many clues and inspired this much conversation and speculation? I'd have to go back to Lost. Bravo, Marvel. Bob, I am right there with you. I totally agree. Totally agree. Levi R. sends in a super chat and said, Monica, I know a guy, a little hint at Reed Richards. Don't know. Could be. We'll see. Wouldn't that be mind-blowing? But after what's been going on in the show, wouldn't put it past him. Vince Smoke Sanj sends in another super chat and says, so synthezoid necrophilia is a thing then? Yeesh. I try not to think about it too much. Johnny Weiner sends in a super chat and says, do you think people weren't impressed with the show at first because it's the first MCU to start off? Black and White and Eternals, Black Widow and Eternals were supposed to come out first. You know what? I think it was something that people didn't know what to make of it. You know, when we're watching a superhero movie, we really kind of know. And in this case, people just didn't. Johnny goes on to say, even Falcon and Winter Soldier was supposed to be the first Disney Plus series. Also, Evan Peters as Pietro. Even I saw that coming. By the way, it's Weiner. Hi, Ann. Like Matthew Weiner, who made Mad Men. Come on, you did not see Pietro coming. No, you didn't. Unless you saw it online as a spoiler. Frederico Jordan sends in a super chat and says, not going to lie, I teared up in the beginning with kids growing up and then growing into the beginning montage of them all growing up. Mini Vision, too. Did you also notice the accent on Wanda when she came out to talk to Monica and everyone? I know. They have not missed a trick in this show. That's why it's so joyous to watch. It's so well thought out. They know exactly what they're doing. Gabe Campbell sends in a super chat and says, I just noticed almost everything in this episode has a slight red outline. Interesting. Well, we see that whatever the power field or whatever the hex, whatever this energy thing is, it's changed color. So maybe everything's going to have red from now on. BMG 501 sends in a super chat and says, crap really hit the fan on this one. But so delightful. I've never wanted to be covered in shit so much as I am when I watch this show. ER's grandpa sends in a super chat and says, hi, John and Ann. I may be mistaken, but wasn't there a shot where Agnes's brooch morphed into a Luke Skywalker cameo? Laugh out loud. Just kidding. Much joy to you both. Well, thanks, ER's grandpa. XT sends in a super chat, one of 3. Hi, I believe WandaVision is the catalyst to open up the possibilities of merging different universes, Sony with Disney and Spider-Man 3. I believe Wanda... Oh, wait, this is... XT, let me find where XT goes. And Disney with Fox and Doctor Strange 2. Doctor Strange then closes the multiverse, leaving selected characters in different universes. Oh, I think you're right about that. If Mephisto is the big bad in WandaVision, Nicolas Cage as Ghost Rider will be the secret cameo. Laugh out loud. Ooh, I don't know about that. Could be fun, though. Isaiah Campbell sends in a super chat and says, I believe Wanda when she says she's not controlling everyone. Examples, when she took over the Sword Agents, they had red eyes. I think you might be right about that. In Age of Ultron, the Avengers had red eyes. And last, when the Beekeeper crosses the Hex, he didn't have red eyes. Ooh, very interesting. Very interesting. Adam Hitchcock sends in a super chat and says, the twins only age up when Agnes is around, and almost again after Sparky mysteriously died in her yard. Coincidence? Twins the endgame? Quicksilver is the Fonz? What's happening, John? I don't know what to tell you. Been watching for years, first time chatting. Thanks for all you do. You're truly the best in the business, and you make lots of people very happy. Well, Adam, I hope you're not disappointed that I read your super chat instead of John, but I want to thank you for supporting the channel, and thanks for super chatting for the very first time. We very much appreciate it. Vince Smoke Sands sends in another super chat. Being French, living in New Zealand, oh, kia ora, mate. I totally understand Wanda's accent coming back. Even though I still have a bit of mine, it does come back. If I get angry, stressed, or very upset. To me, it's a small touch that makes a big difference, and I love it. Also, how scary was Wanda facing Sword, all the rifles and lasers pointed at her chest, and she didn't flinch at all. Wanda's a badass. By the way, I just want to say I lived in New Zealand for a long time in the beginning of the aughts. I lived in Wellington. I lived in Auckland. I lived in Oamaru. I love New Zealand, and I hope you're having a good time there because what a great country. Brian Jackson sends in a super chat and says, hey, John, longtime fan. I think it's interesting that Wanda's powers and mind control doesn't seem to work on the twins. In fact, the twins seem to have their own level of influence on the reality. If what Monica said about them is true, I wonder what their roles will be in the future. Well, in the comics, they become two of the Young Avengers, Wiccan and Speed. Yeah. Jesus sends in a super chat and says, Vision is alive inside the bubble, but she's using enslaved people to maintain it somehow. That's why she is still conflicted. Could be. Again, it's hard to say. There's a lot going on. There was a lot of really interesting information spilled in episode 5. She said she wasn't doing all this. Maybe she doesn't even know she's doing it. I don't know. Brian Jackson sends in a super chat and says, Director Douchebag is behind everything. He was way too quick to paint Wanda as the villain. Also, the diplomas in his office are arranged in a hexagon. Could be. I hope not, though, because it's become a little cliche in the in the Marvel universe. Jason A sends in a super chat and says, WandaVision is genuinely disturbing. I feel uncomfortable while watching it. But isn't that great? Could it be one of the best things Marvel Studios have done if they stick the landing? I think maybe. Only because the level of detail, it bodes well for what they're going to do for the future of the Marvel streaming verse. It's really, really well done. But if they stick the landing, wow, what an achievement. Jar of Snokes sends in a super chat and says, Agnes's main motive was to age the twins this episode, hoping for Olsen twins Full House reference in episode 6. I think we already got one. You can't not think of the Full House twins when you're looking at Elizabeth Olsen. Leandro Arena sends in a super chat and says, have a great weekend with love from Costa Rica. Well, right back at you. Thank you very much for that. Derek Thomas Pierce Phillips sends in a super chat and says, hey, John and Ann, I have just one thing to say about this episode. Wow. I can't believe what we've seen is actually the reanimated corpse of Vision. Yeah, the creepy level of it of that just increases the more I think about it. Yeesh. Darth Impact sends in a super chat and says, the way Monica looked after Agent Wu said Captain Marvel's name, there's something there. I'm thinking resentment? What you think? It seemed like resentment to me. Like Captain Marvel upped and abandoned them both, her and her mom. And I could see that happening. Matt Guillemet sends in a super chat and says, after the episode, watch some X-Men movies. Seeing Evans made me happy. Side note, my favorite scene from Dark Phoenix was Magneto killing them fools on the train. I hope to see Magneto on the show. I've been saying it's going to be Magneto that shows up because, and I'd like to think it was Ian McKellen, but to be honest, I think it's probably going to be Michael Fassbender because Ian McKellen's just too old. He'd be their grandfather. But one never knows. And I did like when he killed those fools on the train, too. That was one of the best parts about that movie. JMeister25 sends in a super chat. Oh my gosh, it's Quicksilver. I mean, a demon. Do you think it's a demon? I mean, there's so many, the ramifications there are large. I'm not sure. Darth Impact sends in a super chat. That was the first super chat I've sent you in a long while, John. Congrats to you and Ann on the new house. Hope you're all staying safe. John, I could speak to that. I think John and Ann have done a pretty good job staying safe. So kudos to them. It's all groovy. Sends in a super chat. Hey, John and Ann, did you catch that look Monica gives when someone mentions Captain Marvel? She didn't look too happy. Yeah, like we said, I think there's a little bit of resentment there. Somebody bailed on them. I think she took off into the galaxy, man. JMeister25 sends in a super chat and says, you didn't see that coming, Pietro. Yeah, I know. I'm still thinking about it. I mean, I walk around going, still, right now, I'm thinking, did they really do that? They did. Fernando Alvarez Juarez sends in a super chat and says, it's official. Wanda can never be forgiven for bringing and killing that dog in the same episode. Evidence of the truest evil. I kid, but this episode was what? And it was. Man, if she's responsible for killing that dog, there's going to be hell to pay. Cam K sends in a super chat and says, is anyone going to talk about what Wanda said during the episode 4 recap before the episode? She said Monica didn't belong here as opposed to what she actually said, which was she had to go home. I thought that was brilliant. And now you're the second person in the chat. Maybe somebody else was bringing this up before. I didn't see it. But in terms of what I've been reading here, I thought that was a really nice, very subtle touch. And, again, it wasn't by accident. Everything that's happening in this show, let me just say, Wanda, I mean, she's out there, man. She's out there, and she's doing crazy, crazy stuff. So, I decided to put my Wanda doll at arm's length in case I wanted to bring her into this chat to accompany me answering these questions. So, yeah, Cam, good catch. Matthew Jacobs-Meyer sends in a super chat and says, we never saw the drone fire, never heard or saw a missile. The drone was off camera visually. Any chance that the sword bad guy is also playing a part in this? He's the cliche government bad guy. You know what? Jury's out. I kind of hope he's not the cliche bad guy, but maybe he's a different thing entirely, whatever that might be. Jasmine Jones sends in a super chat and says, looking back, Wanda loses a little control. Is she fully in control? The way she was teaching her kids about death, she was doing the opposite. I think the jury's out on that. There's a lot more going on. There's 4 more episodes left, but I think every one of them is going to have startling revelations. I honestly, I don't know what to make of it. I've got a million different thoughts in my head. Empire Fan 1980 sends in a super chat and says, I have a crazy out there theory. What if the Jedi-like reveal isn't an X-Men or an Avenger, but a portal opens up and it's Deadpool? People would go crazy. You know what, though? I do think that the show is so well constructed that they're not going to do something. They're going to do something that works within the context of the story they're telling, and I don't think it's going to end well, to be honest. Our good friend Connie Sang is here, and she sends in a super chat. Why do I get the sense that someone, not the kids, are trying to age the kids? Who is trying to rush the process and potentially unlock their powers? Well, it could be anything. If it's Agatha Harkness and if she's really in league with Mephisto, or maybe it's another evil agency. I don't know. But something is rotten in Denmark for all of you Shakespeare fans out there. Will K sends in a super chat and says, we might end up with 2 realities colliding. One with the mutates in the Avengers and the others with mutants in the X-Men. The collision, rad, causes the Fantastic Four. I think there's something to be said for that. I don't know if it's going to be. I don't think they're going to do it all at once, but maybe collectively between WandaVision, Spider-Man 3, and in the multiverse, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, all 3 of those movies lead up to something. K Major sends in a super chat, one of 2. Something I find weird is that they knew of Wanda's break-in. Why not contact any available Avengers? Why bury the story until now? John, you and I, where's K Major's? Well, I don't know where it went. You and I, and wherever K Major went. Main Cam Man sends in a super chat, and so much to unpack in this episode. The Sokovia Accords are still in effect even after Thanos. I think they probably would be. Caleb Kaiser sends in a super chat. Thank you very much, Caleb. I believe Pietro is Mephisto. People are confused as Pietro looks different as in comparison to the Avengers movie. Days of Future Past took place in the 80s, and WandaVision is in the 80s now. Therefore, that's why he looks like that. Could be, but Pietro's never been in our universe. There's no reason at all for Evan Peters to be in our universe because, remember, Quicksilver, they weren't the same age, I don't think. Their ages were very different in Age of Ultron and where Evan Peters would be. His Quicksilver would be older than Aaron Taylor Johnson's. Nathan Gendron sends in a super chat and says, do you still think Wanda is trying to fool herself? I still believe Wanda is aware and okay with the illusion. She just has to fool everyone around her. Again, there's so little we know of what's going on. Maybe she is, but I'm not too sure. Eden Aronovich sends in a super chat and says, over or under 60%, we will not see another Avenger on the show. Love your show, by the way. Eden, under. I think we're going to see another Avenger. I do. Connie Sang sends in another super chat and says, so convenient for Tyler to just now share that footage of Wanda. Yeah, really? It's very convenient. Maybe they wanted to keep a lid on it because they were embarrassed or they didn't know what was happening. Devin A. sends in a super chat and says, I've been so frustrated for days that you've been denying my belief that she has his corpse. Vindicated at last. Laugh out loud. I still love you, though. It's true. I wouldn't have thought that they would have gone in that direction because that's hella creepy. But they did. Lombardo Mendez sends in a super chat, and one of three. First time writing to the show. As a resident of Riverside myself, I want to welcome you and Ann by tipping in. Also, congrats on the new home. Hope one day to run into you at the Tyler Galleria. Now, I believe, Lombardo Mendez. Wait a minute. Well, I can't get that far away. I'm sorry. I don't want to. Lamberto, you say one of three, but I want to thank you for writing in to the show. Christopher Hobgood sends in a super chat and says, does this imply that she plucked X-Men Quicksilver from the Fox universe, and this is how Toby and Andrew enter Spider-Man 3? I definitely think there's something about that. I also think this might explain why J. Jonah Jameson is in our J.K. Simmons is in the MCU. I think it's all part of, because remember, WandaVision takes place 3 weeks after the blip is been stopped, reconstituted, and Spider-Man Far From Home takes place a little over 7 months after everyone's come back. So a lot of stuff going on. Empire Fan 1980 sends in a super chat again and says, Haywood tried to shoot Wanda with a missile. Thought of Red from that 70s show in that moment. Dumb. Yeah, it was pretty dumb. Dan Kearney sends in a super chat and says, do you think Wanda was lying to Vision at the end? Yes, I do. But I also think she seems confused. Maybe she doesn't know what's going on. Because, the big question that I have is after Endgame, what happened in the 3 weeks? Hence, did somebody use the confusion at the end of when everyone started to come back to take advantage of Wanda because they'd been planning on doing it for a while? I think there are forces out there that have yet to be revealed, and this is part of a much bigger plan. Ian St. Amand sends in a super chat and says, I think Agnes is the origin of this, but lost control of Wanda. She says, children cannot be controlled. She killed the dog to make the twins age. I think she will be in movies after. I watched the show dubbed in Canadian French. For every character dubbed in French, they put French dubbing for both the French version, except for those who also appeared before in movies. But they provided specific Canadian dubs for Hayward, Rambeau, and Agnes. Thought? Interesting. I don't know what that means. That is very interesting, though. Maybe that's even part of the details but I don't know what it means. DJ Squall sends in a super chat. Thank you very much. This was by far the best episode. It really showed how the twins are not influenced by her control. Vision finally being self-aware, and also some context of how Vision got here. I can't wait to see where this is going to go. DJ, I think you're exactly right. And I think, that's why this show is so intriguing. It's just so fascinating the way they've been giving us. I mean, the last 2 episodes 4 and 5, they gave us so much really interesting information that makes you rethink everything you've seen. How often do you get a show that's that compelling? I mean, this is some great fantasy writing. I'm very excited about where this is going. Rena Centorita sends in a super chat, or Rita Senorita. It's Centorita. Why did I say it? It's Rena Senorita. Rena Senorita sends in a super chat. Love how they finally acknowledge that Wanda could have easily beaten Thanos in Endgame. Interesting. Could Thanos isn't a mystical being. Thanos is brute force. Thanos, he's a big dude, but, could Wanda? I mean, could Wanda if they were going to, clash, who knows what's going to happen? But, could she have stopped the snap? I don't know. Who's to say? I can't say. No man can say. So, yeah. Empire Fan 1980 sends in a $5 super chat and says, the baby pictures of Wanda were real pictures of Elizabeth Olsen. She looks so much like her sisters from the baby pictures. She totally did. I loved them. I love Elizabeth Olsen. I think I have an old man crush on her. The Gixer73 sends in a super chat and says, she's pissed when the accent comes back. Totally. Oh, Nefarious sent in a super chat and says, I believe it's Mephisto. Wanda sees her real brother when we see Mephisto. Maybe. Hard to say. I mean, again, I don't know. Peter Cunningham sends in a $3.92 super chat. Do you think this Quicksilver is from the multiverse? I do. Mike Thompson sends in a super chat and says, why is Wanda's accent suddenly back? All part of the details of the show that I can't wait to see where it goes. Lombardo Mendez sends in a super chat and says, two of three. Here's another one. Wanda recruited Agnes into helping her maintain the illusion of the sitcom fantasy. This explains all the convenient run-ins, pop-ups, her breaking character without Wanda blasting her out of the bubble. Also, when she asks, you want me to take that again? Very interesting. I think you could be onto something there. Kendall Morgan sends in a super chat and says, what were the people doing that moment she left the town? And did she lie to Vision about not controlling everything? Or does she really believe that? I think she really believes that. And I think she knows she's not controlling everything. Who knows? Rena Senorita sends in another super chat and says, I still think Wanda isn't in full control of this fake reality. I don't think so either. Agnes keeps mentioning her husband Ralph. I think he's behind all of this. Could very well be. Bryce Hansen sends in a super chat and says, so, effing Aaron Taylor Johnson, huh? I-M-A-O. I know, right? Me too. The Dada Axel Show. Actually, I love that. El Lamau. You know, if any of you guys watch Davey 504, you know what it means. Lamau, right? When he says it. Bryce Hansen, thank you for that. Anytime I can say Lamau, it makes me crack up. The Dada Axel Show sends in a $1.99 super chat. Were they going to fight when Vision came from work? Could be. I think that there was some. The throwdown was going to come sometime. So my God Ruler sends in a super chat and says, better Speedster multiverse intro, Flash, or Quicksilver? Ooh. Good. You know what? I would say this only because I would assume you're talking Justice League Flash. I think this because the ramifications are so shocking because it seems bigger. And with the Flash and Justice League, I expected that because it had already been set up to be Crisis on Infinite Earths, so something like that wasn't as surprising to me as this. Jackmaster Nord sends in a super chat and says, my question is, where did Pietro come from? Well, it would be Peter, because he wasn't referred to as Pietro. That's a very good question. Where did he come from? Our reality wasn't aware that X-Men even existed, at least right now, so how would anyone even know to come get him? My thought is that it has to be somebody who's already familiar with the concept of the multiverse. So maybe it is Mordo. I don't know. OJ sends in a super chat and says, do you think Vision may get to the point where the only option is destroying Wanda, similar to Wanda in Infinity War? Perhaps that betrayal further motivates the villain turn. Could be. I think that's, again, these are all great ideas. And I love the fact that this show is made people think about how much is really there and what people are thinking. OJ sends in a super chat and says, do you think Vision may get to the point where the only option is destroying Wanda, similar to Wanda? Oh, I already read that. You know what? That was me. Take it back. I should do a cut right here and just go, just like the show. Jeff Henderson sends in a super chat and says, where is an A-lister to deal with this A-lister threat? That's a good question. I think that they haven't put the call out yet, but you'd think that somebody would call the Avengers at this point. I mean, how can they not have an Avenger come in right now? They know. I would think Sword would be on the phone with the Avengers about this right now, and I think they're going to deal with that because they're going to have to. Jeff Henderson sent in a super chat and says, "Where's an?" Oh, see, I'm doing this twice. Gregor the Goateed Geek sends in a super chat and says, Wanda's personality is shattered. One personality is doing her best to make the other happy. That one speaks with an accent. The other is not fully aware. You know what, Gregor? I think it's very Gollum and Smeagol. I think you're exactly right. Empire Fan 1980 goes on and sends in a super chat. Her accent may suck. I don't care. She's so hot with it. I can't say how hot I think she is with it because that would be weird and creepy. So I'm just going to say, you're not wrong. Ian Wendu sends in a super chat and says, what if it isn't Pietro, just another mind-controlled person? She doesn't recognize him until he introduces himself as her brother. But here's the thing, he's not part of our reality, so why would he even know that he is her brother? Nobody knows he's her brother because he comes from somewhere else, a reality that isn't part of our own. That's why it's so intriguing. El Marcy 1983, is it El Marcy? El Mars sends in a super chat and says, hello there. The in-series ads seem to be references to the Infinity Stones. Soap, cube, tesseract, clock, time, red liquid, Legos, ether. Yep, I agree with you. Isaiah Campbell sends in a super chat. I strongly believe Wanda can control the kids if she really wanted to. Notice when Agnes breaks character, the kids stop crying. After the fact, she tried to with her powers. I think you're absolutely right about that. I mean, I really do. I think that there's all of that is there. And what I do love is these questions. It's not like we're waiting. All of these questions, the questions that have arisen and that have been paid off in the last 2 episodes are enormous. So I think we're going to get answers to these very, very quickly. Rita Senorita sends in another super chat. Theory about Monica and Captain Marvel drama. Look, I think clearly that Captain Marvel left Earth, and I think Monica and her mother probably felt abandoned, especially after the movie Captain Marvel. And I think they probably expected more from Carol Danvers, but for whatever reason, her responsibilities kept her from coming back. At least that's what I would think. Nifris sends in a super chat and says, the biggest what the hell moment on WandaVision will be the introduction, I hope I said that right, of Deadpool. She's going to accidentally bring him into the MCU. I don't think that they are going to do that. Because I think it would really break the mood of what they're setting up and what they're doing here. I think it would be too silly, and this show is not the silliness. The premise is pretty silly, but they're playing it off correctly. So I don't know. We'll see. Lombardo Mendez, here's his 3 of 3. Also, I, for one, enjoy the sports talk, so please don't stop. Well, I mean, I have to tell you, I'm really excited about tomorrow's game. I hate the Patriots because I'm a Seahawks fan, but no one can deny that seeing Tom Brady and the Gronk, or just Gronk. Gronkowski? Is he the Gronk or just Gronk? Come on, they're Patriots. What do I care? But I really do want to see both of them. I mean, I don't think they're going to beat Kansas City because Kansas City is a tough team. But what if they did? Wouldn't that be cool? I think it'd be cool. I'm sorry, little one sends in a super chat. Quicksilver has the same jacket he has in Days of Future Past, but it's brown instead of silver. Yeah, it's amazing. We just don't know. It's a very intriguing development. Joshua Tabak says, she recast Pietro. I laughed and loved that line. I loved it too. It was great because it was so, it's just, again, the writing in this show is so smart. Jackmaster Nord sends in a super chat and says, I think it was Monica that sent Pietro. But how would Monica know Pietro exists? Nobody on our Earth should even know of his existence. So, yeah, I mean, unless it has to do with literally the multiverse, somebody knew that there was another, maybe there's somebody who's very aware that a multiverse exists and utilized that and was able to pluck Pietro out because they know, or Peter out because they know of the lineage or something. Chaz McGill sends in a super chat and says, Vision said, you don't want to make those decisions for me, Wanda. I felt that on another level. Also, she came out of the bubble like Steve Austin. That's true. It was scary. Super Crazy Movie Geek sends in a super chat and says, Norm never says Wanda. He says she and her. Interesting. I like that. See, all these details matter. Douglas Scarborough sends in a super chat and says, Wanda is not the total villain here. She's being made to think that she's in control. Her grief makes it easy for whoever is behind this to manipulate her. I really agree with that. I think you're absolutely right. I think she's being manipulated because of her grief. It left her susceptible to suggestion, like Khan Noonien Singh said in Star Trek 2. Matthew Jacobsmeyer sends in a super chat and says, this show reminded me a lot of The Truman Show, especially with Vision seeing through the various facades, and that is one of my absolute favorite films. You're not wrong, Matthew. I thought a lot about that because it has a lot of similar vibe. Truman Show is a terrific, terrific film, and I think there's a lot of The Truman Show in WandaVision in different ways. Solar Eclipse Productions sends in a super chat and says, theory Monica is a Skrull because both her and Skrull Fury don't like the mention of Captain Marvel for some reason. Ooh, you know what? I wouldn't take that off the table. Wouldn't take it off the table. Midtown Mike sends in a super chat and says, the reason I do believe what Wanda says about not controlling everything is my belief is that she's made a deal with Mephisto. You know, we've been talking a lot about Mephisto, and that is like one big theory, but other than the fact that we've seen hexes and things all over the place, I haven't seen necessarily anything to lead me to believe it's Mephisto. It seems like it would be something more grounded. I mean, if anything could be grounded in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it just seems I would think that would be the way to go. Rodrigo Merg sends in a super chat and says, this could be the result of a granted wish gone bad. Wanda got what she wanted in a twisted way. Since she misses her brother, the wish granter Mephisto pulls another Quicksilver from another reality. Rodrigo, I think there's a lot of truth in that. Maybe not exactly what you said, but definitely in the spirit, in the wheelhouse of where we're going or where they're taking us. So I think you're definitely onto something. Mikey Veach sends in a super chat and says, I'm surprised nobody is theorizing that Nightmare could be involved here. He is a Doctor Strange villain after all. He could be, but again, you know, if they're going to introduce a new villain, they still have, basically 2 hours to do it, so they could, but they're going to have to introduce that villain, I would think, pretty soon because, you know, if they introduce him in the last half an hour, it's going to be strange, although could be an interesting reveal, but if it's somebody new, I think we need some more time to interact with this villain, so it'll be interesting to see. Thomas Smedley sends in a super chat and says, over or under 20%, there's going to be an ATJ. I think an ATJ Pietro or Fassbender cameo. Well, yeah, I mean, I think Aaron Taylor Johnson could show up. I do. I think so. I think both of them could show up. And they could do some kind of all good things kind of a thing. The next generation, all good things. Benjamin GL sends in a super chat and says, so far all my predictions are spot on, but my God, John, your predictions, I think Mephisto is not involved, but damn, you agree with me, so maybe I'm wrong. You never know. You never know. Douglas Scarborough sends in a super chat and says, also, Vision's coworker said she's in my head. That's a misdirect. She has to be Agnes, and there's someone else pulling the strings. That could very well be. Again, that could very well be. And I just think we don't know. Benjamin GL sends in a super chat and says, Pietro being recast is Marvel making the best of an awkward situation. I think that's Kevin Feige winking at the camera because she clearly needs the body to resurrect. Maybe it's a random Westview person. See, I don't think so. Because remember, the Peter Maximoff from the X universe, from Fox's X universe, has no connection. Nobody in our world, nobody in the MCU would know anything about that connection. They're different realities entirely. So the idea that somebody in the MCU would know that that character exists, I mean, I think that if somebody could say, I looked into the quantum realm or I looked into the multiverse and I found this person on another Earth, they could make that up. They've been talking about the different Earths in the Marvel comic universe. They brought that idea into the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Spider-Man Far From Home. So clearly we had no idea just how much we were being set up for to deal with this, but we'll see. I'm curious. I don't know. Dan Samaflange sends in a super chat who says, hi, John, I think this Pietro is real because the alarm at Sword went off when he appeared, and it seems to go off whenever the Hex Zone is breached. I agree with you. But how did he know where to go? Like, whoever brought him to the universe, to our universe, either briefed him, told him, sent him somewhere, because he could run around the whole outside of the hex. He would find out that there's government agents there. He might stop and wonder, like, I'm not even in my reality. He would have a lot of questions. He had to have been briefed before he went to that house by someone or something. Soggy Mini Muffin sends in a super chat and says, if you change the language on Disney Plus to English, the audio description, the narrator states it's the Quicksilver from the X-Men movies. Wow. That's interesting. Well, there you go. Matt Sanders sends in a $4.99 super chat and says, I know they couldn't change the aspect ratio back and forth in the real world and Wanda's. I was disappointed there wasn't sidebars in the show. That's interesting. But they did, though. They have been changing that aspect ratio. And Matt Sanders said that. Mike Goldberg sends in a super chat and says, I heard Fantastic Four have zero to do with this, but it doesn't mean they can't use Doctor Doom, master of mystic tech, and would make sense as long as running behind scenes as the puppet master for several movies. Maybe, but I think that there's something going on here that's going to play into Spider-Man 3. Whatever's going on here has larger ramifications in the multiverse. And remember, we've already seen, I believe that J. Jonah Jameson in Far From Home is another manifestation of whatever's going on here. We just didn't know it at the time. Shane Gibber sends in a super chat and says, okay, guys, over or under 30%, we actually get a Spider-Man 3 trailer attached to the last episode of WandaVision, like we got Avengers After Cap. I wouldn't be surprised about that. Either way, something's gonna. I think faux show. We are going to get a post-credit scene at the end of the last episode, for sure. Benjamin GL sends in a super chat and says, I think when mutants join the MCU, it will be caused by the energy from having 3 snaps on Earth. It modifies the DNA of children and adults too. I think you might be right. I think something along those lines, because it makes sense. And oh my God, look who is here. Han Solo, my Han, justice for Han. Han Solo sends in a super chat. Just speculating, Wanda took Vision's body from a sword facility, and assuming they wanted to weaponize him, do you think they may also have the remains of Ultron? The acting director did say they're working on AI. Oh, I think we can bet our bottom dollar that they do. I would think so. I think that's a very good assumption. By the way, justice for you, sir. Justice for you. We'll see. Benjamin GL sends in a super chat and says, Sword, sentient weapons, and astronauts, a.k.a. mutants, and Fantastic Four. Sword will eventually introduce them, not just in WandaVision. I agree. I think you're right about that. Sword's going to be around for a while. Solar Eclipse Productions sends in a super chat and says, tinfoil hat time. Evan Peters Quicksilver. Okay, over under 3% fits cameos to help build Monica's truck, since different worlds may be colliding. Different worlds are colliding, but I think it's going to start slow. So I don't think you're going to see that now. Chaz McGill sends in a super chat. The argument by the way, Wanda and Vision, the argument between Wanda and Vision reminded me of Daredevil and the Punisher on the rooftop, so layered and intense. Great acting and writing. I agree with you, Chaz McGill. The writing is so great, and it has been so intense, and I'm here for it. I think it's so very good. Super Crazy Movie Geek sends in a super chat and says, do you know things about the show that we don't yet? I don't. I don't know if John does. He might have heard things. I don't know anything, and if someone was going to tell me, I don't want to know. I don't want to be spoiled. The Evan Peters thing was spoiled for me, and I didn't like that at all. I wish I'd seen it in the show. Mahir Hake says, love the edit between Darcy calling Haywood a D-bag. Is it? But it got intercut with terrorists. Between this and weapon in Sword's name, over or under 40%, Hayward is evil. You know what? Everyone's saying he's evil, but that would be so cliche now for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think that, look, Monica Rambeau knows him, and they have a really good relationship. So maybe if he turns out to be evil, that would be disappointing to me because it would be so obvious. So I'm hoping they go in a different direction than that. I don't want it to be that obvious. Benjamin GL sends in a super chat and says, scans are blank because of radiation from the hex. The image they showed of blank scans look exactly like interference from radiation in an MRI or just fan service. I like that. My assumption was Monica's scans showed heavy light. Yeah, I thought so too because of who she is. Photon. Reader Senorita says, when Monica mentions she knows an aerospace engineer who would love a challenge, could it be someone from the Fantastic Four? Dr. Doom, Reed Richards? I would say if it is anyone from the Fantastic Four, it's Reed Richards. Anthony Corbett sends in a super chat and says, what was Sword doing with Vision's body? I'm guessing that wasn't in line with Vision's living will. Maybe Wanda's retrieval of the body wasn't self-serving. Well, I think you're right. I mean, I think it wasn't self-serving, and probably Sword wasn't supposed to have him, but they took him anyway because, I mean, look, the people of Earth, when they're now dealing with extraterrestrials like Thanos and the Snap, and any sense of decorum has to go out the window for the preservation of our race. We've basically been thrust into a galactic community, and we're not ready for it. So I think all of those things are probably true. Joshua Tebek sends in a super chat and says, could Wonder Man be introduced in the series? Again, I've heard a lot of theories about that. I wouldn't put anything past this show. Dennis Reyes sends in a super chat and says, I know it's a mix of the era as a whole, but what show do you think might be the setting for the 90s episodes? Friends, Seinfeld, any other? Yeah, I think it's going to be Friends. Friends or Seinfeld's good, both of those. Probably Friends. Ardent Defender sends in a super chat. John Pietro, Evan Peters, also wearing the exact same leather jacket he wore when he was in the Fox X-Men universe. Exact same jacket. I agree. I think because he has to, because he's from that universe. He's not from our universe. That's why I want to know, how did he get here? How did somebody know to even go get him? And these questions will be answered. Benjamin GL sends in a super chat and says, John, watch WandaVision commercial with Nick Fury. It's perfect. It deserves more views. Go watch live. I've seen that. The Nick Fury Quicksilver commercial. Was that in the show? Is that from episode 6? I don't know where that went from. It was like a leak, right? Fernando Alvarez Juarez sends in a super chat and says, so John, will this be like Mando, where we see almost no footage of the last 2 episodes? I feel we've seen only up to episode 7, which would be 2000s. Yeah, I think they're going to keep it under wraps, man. Keep it under wraps. I mean, how much fun are we all having? And what if they just don't give us any footage at all? Ian Wendu sends in another super chat. If Magneto or Professor X show up, I'll donate $1,000 to charity. No joke. Well, Ian, we're going to hold you to that, and I want to see a receipt. Alexis Sarabia sends in a super chat and says, congrats on the new home. You always mention Kevin's 5-year plan, but this seems like the way to bring in the X-Men while staying true to the plan, slowly merging the multiverse as a sort of soft reboot. It's very comic book-esque. It certainly happened in the comics, so you could be right. Although I think it's kind of a cheat too, but it's also kind of cool with what's going on now. Benjamin GL sends in another super chat and says, I can't find the episode 6 promo. Bruh, don't watch promos. Just enjoy the show. Don't look for it. It's like what Dr. Zayas said to Taylor when he was going off into the Forbidden Zone at the end of Planet of the Apes. Don't look for it, Taylor. You might not like what you find. Don't look at promos. Nathan Hoffman sends in a super chat and says, hey, John and Ann, I'm loving the show and the theories. The moment Monica got upset about Captain Marvel reminded me of when Fury, actually a Skrull, had a similar reaction in Far From Home. Do you think they have any connection? Thank you so much and have a great evening. I think there is a connection there because you'd be hard-pressed to say there wasn't. I mean, we are directly referencing a character that we saw as a little girl in Captain Marvel. Now she's all grows up, and she's all grows up, she's all grows up, and she's all grows up. So there's got to be some connection there. We don't know yet what that is because we know they're doing a Secret Invasion show. So I just can't even, the ramifications of it all. Glenn Taylor sends in a super chat and says, who's the guy watching the other TV smoking a cigar? Looks like he's in the AIM building. All bets are off. All of these things. And I just love the fact that there's so many different theories flying fast and furiously all around us. Vegetable Tube sends in a super chat and says, Thanos will do a Weight Watchers commercial. Lose 50%. 50%. Does he? Do you need to lose weight? I don't think you do. Connor Caden sends in a super chat and says, hey, John, greetings from Ireland. Loving the show so far with Evan Peters in the show as Quicksilver. Are all bets officially off? I would say so. I would say all bets are officially off. Where's your other? Connor. Oh, not here. All bets are officially off. Mr. L sends in a super chat and says, and remember the talk of Deadpool in the MCU? I just don't think it's going to be Deadpool. I think that would ruin the mood of whatever they have going here. I think they won't do that. It's one thing to traverse the multiverse and do all this stuff, but ultimately, I think they're dealing with real trauma, real sadness, and bringing in Deadpool would sort of undercut the mood. Of course, you never know. Brandon Barrett sends in a super chat and says, I think Wanda is telling the truth that she doesn't know how all this happened. I think someone, possibly Agnes, is using Wanda's pain and wants to manipulate her to do this for whatever reason. I think Agnes is like the devil on her shoulder, coaxing her into doing all this to alleviate her pain. And she is either going to snap out of it or fully embrace it. Also, the way Agnes is cognitive to everything makes me believe she's either fully or partially manipulating her cause like Norm, who is in full character mode until Viz touched him. Agnes is acting along to keep up the lie. I agree. I think that's all probably very, very true. Devon A sends in a super chat and says, did you notice Wanda's accent came back a little when she was outside of the Hex talking to Sword? Absolutely. 100%. And that's good of you to notice because I think again, detail is very important. Richard Ganther sends in a super chat. All these revelations and additional mysteries are great, but let's not forget the most important part of episode 5. Darcy finally got her coffee. It's true. Senpai, I like this. Senpaigar. Pygar is the angel in Barbarella. Senpaigar says, Agnes seemed to be thinking and acting on her own while others are under brain control and acting the way Wanda wants. Oh, I think she's absolutely acting on her own because we saw that in episode 5 where she says, do you want me to take it back? I mean, she knows what's up. She's either playing a part, she knows exactly what's up. Andy Anthony sends in a super chat and says, hey, John, did you guys notice Monica's x-ray thing where they hinted that she got her powers? I think that, yeah, maybe she had them already. But no one knows that but her. FaZe Chump sends in a super chat and says, when Norm said she's in my head, do you think he's referring to Wanda? Do you think she's referring to Wanda? Maybe not. Could be. I just don't know. I mean, I don't have enough information yet, but could very well be. Mo Jeneth sends in a super chat and says, John, what do you think if this really is the Quicksilver from the Fox universe? If it turns out it's not, it's going to seriously hurt my feelings. I think this is gold. I hope they don't screw it up. I think it's gold too. I think it's amazing. And I think it would have to be because how is someone else going to know anything about another universe? They wouldn't. And if there's obviously a player to be named that knows about the multiverse, they know about the multiverse, so they know that it's a total different reality. There's no way, unless they've already known it's the reality and they've recreated Quicksilver from the Fox universe. But I think it's genuine. I really do. I think it's genuine. Donald Thomas sends in a super chat and says, one is fast and one is weird from Age of Ultron. WandaVision made Age of Ultron a good Avengers movie. You know what, Donald, I gotta say, Age of Ultron gets better every time I watch it. I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of Age of Ultron. I really am. I really am. Anime Novus says, before Wanda gets up to answer the door for Pietro, did you hear the Star Wars music in the background? I did not. That's interesting. That is very interesting. Now I'm going to have to go back and listen for that. Trevor Augustus sends in a super chat and says, how did Sword get Vision's body from Wakanda? Well, they probably have some kind of a deal. I'm sure the Wakandans and Sword are sharing information. I mean, after what happened, I would think all the intelligence agencies in the world have to be a little bit more open with one another, because the threats Earth is now facing are enormous compared to our petty squabbles. At least that's how I would think it would be. Luke1234 sends in a super chat and says, I hope the major cameo is Hugh Jackman dressed in the classic blue and yellow Wolverine costume for the Halloween episode. Could be. That's actually, I thought a lot about that. But then again, it kind of is, I mean, it could be, but we kind of denigrate it, I think. Cam K sends in a super chat and said, I asked 4 questions through your website for the WandaVision spoiler review. I didn't know it was super chats only for that. I wanted you to receive more than 2/3 of the revenue. Is there any fix? Honestly, Cam, I don't know how John has that set up, so I can't speak to that. So I apologize. Polo Bear sends in a super chat and says, is there any coincidence that Agnes has been present for all the children's age change? Oh, I think it's more than coincidence. I think she's pushing it along. Killing the dog almost made them age again. Prepping them, I think 100%. She's totally involved somehow. Chris Ferrante sends in a super chat. Did I hear Wanda's accent come back a bit when she was confronted by Sword in the real world? Yes, you did, as we've talked about. Absolutely 100%. Andrew Valovich sends in a super chat and says, did you notice that Wanda had her accent return when she left the Hex? I'm pretty sure we haven't heard it until now. You are correct. Great minds think alike. All of you are thinking that. Let's see. Just a Shadow 82 sends in a super chat and says, I think that dog has seen some shit. Seemed pretty suicidal. Could be right about that. Just in Time sends in a super chat. Hugh Jackman cameo, calling it now. Well, could be. I mean, after you have one character from Days of Future Past and Apocalypse show up and Dark Phoenix, I wouldn't put it past him. But then again, would Wolverine just be cool to see, or would he fit into the story? I mean, having Quicksilver show up, the ramifications are amazing. And it plays into Wanda's grief. It plays into what the show is about. I don't think they're going to throw cameos in willy-nilly unless they mean something. Josh Ward sends in a super chat and says, what if Professor X created the Hex to keep Wanda contained and he's doing things to keep her at bay like he did to Jean in X3? Well, I think maybe, but then we'd have to know who that is. And I don't think anyone knows who Professor X is in this universe. Afrofuturism Productions sent in a $5 super chat and says, what if it's Blue Marvel and not Reed who Monica calls? This could be their relationship introduction from the comics. Could be. But I think, again, that might get too deep. Not that it's not going deep already. Again, I don't put anything past them at this point. Brandon Carter sends in a super chat and says, notice that previously on WandaVision they changed the final scene where Wanda said Rambeau went home and she didn't belong here. I did. Some people pointed that out. Very interesting. Again, the devil's in the details in this show. Maybe that's where Mephisto lies. Michael Francis sent in a super chat and says, hey, John, we love the show. Who's Ralph? I think Ralph is the mastermind behind it all. Also, Norm equals hilarious. My favorite resident. Yeah. I don't know who Ralph is, but we're going to find out. Ralph could definitely be your husband. I'm sure when Ralph is revealed, the reveal will be quite spectacular. They'll probably, if it is Mephisto, he shows up as a big demon entity. Someone's going to be like, oh my God, what's that? And Catherine Hahn's going to turn around and very deadpan-like is going to say, oh, that's Ralph. Brandon Jones sent in, Michael Francis. Oh no, I just said Michael Francis. Brandon Jones sends in a super chat and says, hey, big fan of the show. Wanda's subconscious could play a bigger role on why she doesn't even know she's doing what she's doing most of the time. And she could bring in the mutants universe. She could be, which would be an interesting riff on what she did in the House of M storyline. So, you know what? All bets are off at this point. Benjamin GL sends in a super chat and says, did Paul Bettany say that it was another Avenger he wanted to work with but didn't? No, he didn't say it was another Avenger. He said it was an actor. It could be an Avenger, but maybe somebody he hadn't worked with before. Maybe. I don't know. Jason Lee sends in a super chat and says, "What up, John and Ann? I love this community of Marvel lovers. WandaVision has been incredible. The bar is set. I think the aerospace engineer Monica Texas Reed Richards peeped the smile on her face. Could be. I'd love to see that. How awesome would that be?" Brad Canfield sent in a super chat and says, "Anyone else find it weird that anyone close to Captain Marvel gets agitated at the mention of her name? First with Nick Fury in Far From Home and now with Monica." Well, maybe. Could be. She's with great power comes great responsibility, and if she has to leave Earth all the time, she can piss people off. So I can see that. Justice Shadow sends in a super chat and says, "I don't like the director, but I agree with you. You don't schedule a duel with a mind-reading sentient weapon. You take the shot." I agree. Good point. Haunted Mario sends in a super chat and says, "Way out of left field, but if the Puppet Master is the Shadow King and the Pocket Universe is the Astral Plane, good way to introduce Professor X." Could be. Maybe this is what they're doing, that this is joining two universes and putting them into one. I just don't know. Templar U sends in a super chat and says, "John, random question. You from Montreal? I heard you talk about it." I am. I'm from West Island, Pointe Claire. Anyway, gonna watch WandaVision now. I don't know if John's from Montreal. I thought John was from Hamilton, but you never know. I just want to point out that my film, Tango Shalom, that I produced and edited, did win Best Comedy and Best Actor at the Montreal Film Festival the other day. So thank you, Montreal. I've been to Fantasia up there. What a festival. Love Montreal. So much fun. Antoine Fair sends in a super chat and says, the can't I moment when talking about controlling Vision. If you think Civil War, she can control him and also control his emotion in Infinity War. It's true. It is true. That is a very good point. Benjamin GL sends in a super chat and says, "Amazing episode ruined by horrible pacing, especially the first 2/3 of this episode needed to be longer to let scenes breathe." Oh, I don't agree with you. I think it was great. And the episode was 41 minutes, so I thought it had real time. I didn't think it was horribly paced. The Movie Guru movie review and more sent in a super chat. "Last scene in Mirror Evan's hand is red." Last scene, the mirror in Evan's hand is red. Thoughts? Again, all bets are off. Anything that's going on inside that house, there's magic involved. Dan's Production sends in a super chat. Says, "I think she's losing control of her powers and creating a new reality without even realizing it." I think you might be right about that. You never know. There's so many questions to answer, and all these theories that you are all throwing out are totally legit. So it's hard to say. Telephone Production sends in a super chat and says, "Hey, Ann and John. Oh my God, Wanda has been sleeping with a corpse, an actual corpse. Well, a machine. I can only imagine the level of grief and sorrow she must be enduring as her cognitive dissonance increases, and she has a full psychological breakdown. Have you ever seen a sitcom be that dark? Keep up the great work. Love your show." Well, I'll tell you, you're right, Telephone Productions. It's pretty dark. I mean, this show's dark. I don't think it's going to end well. I think it's going to end on a big cliffhanger, scary note. At least that's what I believe. Donald A. sends in a super chat and says, "I have to second your tweet from earlier, John. WandaVision. What the F?" You mean, what the fantastic? It's pretty amazing. I know. Pretty amazing. Matt Sanders sends in a super chat and says, "When the first thing I saw was the back of a man's gray head, I thought it was Cap at first. I was so wrong." I know, because you're not expecting it. Like, why would you? If you didn't know the spoilers, you didn't know that was coming, what a great surprise that was. My God. EJ sends in a super chat and says, "Weird that Aaron Taylor Johnson wasn't even cameoed in the rally video with Wanda, even though we see him in Age of Ultron. Might be nothing, might be something." I agree. Who knows? We just don't know. Tony W. sent in a super chat and says, "John, we were all wrong. The director, while a bad guy, is not the big bad. The mailman is Mephisto. Notice him tell the twins your mom won't let them get far. He knows what's going on and was smiling." Yep, could be. That's exactly, the mailman's he's been omnipresent. I definitely think the mailman's part of something. Dirk Walker sent in a super chat and says, "My theory, Wanda brought Vision's remains to the other entity in Westview to help her revive him. The entity helps her in exchange for the children." Could very well be. Could very well be. Not a bad theory. The Third Man sends in a super chat and says, we can ask this question about any MCU standalone film, but why wouldn't Sword bring in any other Avenger, Maria Hill, Fury, or anyone she knows to help? Well, because this is all brand new. This is all just happening. Sword comes in. Everybody wants their jurisdiction. I think that we're going to have to see somebody call somebody now that they know it's Wanda and the Avengers. Remember, all this stuff it's happening very, very quickly. It's almost happening in real time. So I think that the next episode you're going to see a call to the Avengers or somebody. Black Bleach says, why did Monica cringe at the mention of Carol? And I can't wait to see Evan Peters as the cool Uncle Jesse in the Full House 90s episode. Could very well be. I think there's obviously history between Captain Marvel and Monica's family that we don't know about yet. So they wanted to set that up to put that very question in our minds, which I think is great. Thomas Petch sends in a super chat and says, in Monica's character poster with the TVs, you can see what looks like part of her costume. You can see the black and white around her shoulders. I hope they go with that costume. I love that costume. I can't wait to see her. I think it'll be great. Andrew Valovich sends in a super chat and says, is it possible Pietro breached the hex? All the alarms in the sword camp went off at the exact same minute he showed up. I think that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. And again, the attention to detail is tremendous. I love it. I think that's exactly what happened. Eric Cusino sends in a super chat and says, could the Skywalker level cameo be James Spader in person appearing as Ultron? Sword is working on AI after all. Yeah, but I don't think that would necessarily be unexpected, because obviously all this referencing back to Pietro Maximoff dying, he died in Age of Ultron. So, Age of Ultron is obviously a cornerstone of the foundational idea of this series, so it wouldn't surprise me if Ultron shows up in some way, shape, or form. I wouldn't, but I don't think it would be Skywalker level. Brad Canfield sends in a super chat and says, in the Far From Home memorial, they had Cap 2, but he's just 140 years old and not dead. I agree. Maze sends in a super chat and says, did you guys notice when Evan Peters is showing up and Darcy is watching, the alarm is going off the Sword base? Someone leaving or entering? Yeah, no, it was him. And yeah, absolutely. I think that's just a great detail. And the fact that you notice it shows that they're doing their job. Sam Fisher sends in a $5 super chat and says, if the episode 6 promo you saw was screen culture, I think it's fake. It's all footage we've seen before and the audio is weird. Could be. Could very well be, but we'll know. What I love about the show is all of the speculation is so great, but I don't want things spoiled. It's only another week between episodes, so I think what we're getting is so cool. It's so much fun. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Adam sends in a super chat and says, one theory I have is Evan Peters is Mephisto in disguise. I think Wanda got her enhanced powers from another villain we have yet to see. Who effing knows? I don't know, but we're going to find out. That's the great thing. We just have to wait and see and go along for the ride. JB1411 sends in a super chat and says, my theory is Wanda got a hold of the Darkhold, which is the book of sins that connects to Doctor Strange. It's very powerful and allows you to do whatever you want, even bring people back from the dead. That's an interesting theory. I like that theory. We shall see. Jesse Argetta sends in a super chat and says, if other actors and other franchises are fair game, now all the gloves are off. What's next? Mary-Kate and Ashley, Godzilla, dogs and cats living together? Well, if you really think about it, the ties between Quicksilver and Wanda are so interesting, and they could never deal with the actual lineage of those characters because the rights situation was bifurcated. And now that they're both under one roof, you can do crazy stuff like this. And I'm here for it. I love it. Infidelus says, I bet Mephisto caused a tear in realities and got Quicksilver snatched from his and is now brainwashed, causing Fassbender to go after him. Could be. I think that could absolutely happen. Sam Fisher sends in a super chat and says, is it just me, or is Hayward revealing the CCTV footage super convenient? Why didn't he bring it up in episode 4? Was it just it didn't apply at the time? Look, I think remember how intelligence works. When you're gathering intelligence, you're not going to give up what you know at once. You're going to have to. I mean, this whole situation for everybody involved. Imagine if you're on the outside and you're part of Sword or whatever, and you're looking into this. This whole situation is so bizarre that, you're gathering information to see what's up before you're not going to leap before you learn what's going on. And I think that this situation is so wacky, that's what they have to do. Larkin McElwee sends in a super chat and says, we're all assuming she who is in Norm's mind is Wanda. Perhaps it's Agnes. Wanda could be telling the truth to Vision at the end of the episode. Absolutely, Larkin. I think a lot of people have said that. It could very well be true. Ian Wendu says, Norm said she's in control. Yep. So Ian Wendu also goes on to say Wanda is the director and the other characters. Are you up here? And the other person is the producer. That's a great way of putting it. I think you might very well be correct about that. Just a Shadows 82 says, I'm thinking the reason she shows up, I don't know. I'm thinking the reason these shows keep changing is because Vision keeps rejecting it, and faster too. I think that's very astute. Very astute. Greg C. says, since WandaVision happens after the snap, how unlucky do you have to be to have been snapped into dust for 5 years, then a couple of weeks later be mind controlled by Wanda? Enough to create a villain? Could be. I like that. I like the way you think. Very much so. Benjamin GL sent in a super chat and says, the director seems chill and turned on Wanda the second he put Monica in danger. He seems like misdirection. He's the average assistant forced to do the job of a boss. Could very well be. I think that it's too easy to think people are villains who they might be because we've seen these things before. Oaken Witch Lane, June Gallagher, sends in a super chat and says, hi, John and Ann. Congrats on the new house and your new job, Ann. Is the Hex a magnetic force field? Who else could do this but Magneto? Oh, I think it's a mystical force field. I think it's not Magneto. I don't think it's Magneto at all. Joseph Book Reviews sends in a super chat and says, I love how the show has made Age of Ultron relevant. Me too, because I love Age of Ultron. It gets better every time I watch it. Donald Thomas, and I think, again, Age of Ultron is going to have a lot more relevance to other parts of the MCU as well as we move forward. I think it's great. I love how Wanda is both a sequel and a prequel to so many different things. Donald Thomas sends in a super chat and says, love the Endgame nerd debate on who almost took out Thanos, Captain Marvel or Wanda. Great foreshadowing for Thanos or Captain Marvel reveal. I agree. And again, they know. What I love so much about the MCU is they know. They know what's up. They know what they're doing. It's fantastic. I love it. John, what the fuck? I know it was rumored, but holy crap, Quicksilver showed up. Not as we expected. What does this mean? More characters or actors from the universe? Michael Fassbender? I'm telling you. Oh, by the way, that was Mike Malkowitz. He said that. I think, Mike, you're absolutely right. And they're really setting up. When they're talking multiverse of madness, they're not kidding. And by the way, I've been saying this. We've already seen the results. J. Jonah Jameson in Spider-Man Far From Home, I think, is direct fallout from what we're seeing happen here. That's a theory I have. William Frog sends in a super chat and says, this being between Endgame and Far From Home makes me wonder if Mysterio and Barf are involved. Could very well be. But Mysterio, I think he had knowledge of the multiverse that he uses in Far From Home. And we'll find that out later. Shadow Link sends in a super chat and says, so since Wanda apparently doesn't have the name Scarlet Witch just yet, who do you think will come up with that name for her? Ooh, I don't know. That's a good question. Somebody. I don't know who's going to come up with it. Will it be Miss Dennings? I don't know. That'll be interesting to see. That's a good question. I don't know. Greg C. sends in a super chat and says, the guy who's mind controlled doesn't say Wanda probably because he doesn't know her name. Yeah, he doesn't. He's not. I don't think anybody would know them. And they don't know what's happened to them either. So they don't say her name. But also, he doesn't, I don't think he knows what happened to him, so he just knows a woman's been in his head. Because he probably hasn't been out of that office. Greg C. says, oh, you just said that. FaZe Chump sends in a super chat and says, don't forget about Dottie. Again, the mysterious Dottie. Where is she? Talking about the kids and all that. Who knows? She's, again, all this stuff has been thought out. They're going to bring it all back. We'll see. Halloween is coming, so we're going to find out who's trick-or-treating. Windwalker sends in a super chat. Explanation of my comment in last week's discussion. Monsters from the id is Forbidden Planet, a classic of early sci-fi. Watch it. Oh, Monsters, John. Monsters from the id, created by the Krell, based on their super science. I'm a huge fan of Forbidden Planet. It's the blueprint for Star Trek. Ben Rayner sends in a super chat and says, wild theory, Norm is the big bad, and the big bad is hiding in plain sight, i.e. Pro Krill in Harry Potter. Oh, in Harry Potter, right. Yes, I think you're absolutely right about that. But I don't know who it is. But we shall see. It's All Groovy sends in a super chat and says, what do you make of Wu asking if Wanda has any alias and they don't mention Scarlet Witch? Could this be a clue she turns evil? I think that they just haven't called her that yet. You know, she's never had an alias in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think that's what it's all about. Beth Grove sends in a super chat. Thanks, Beth. Appreciate it. CA sends in a super chat. Pointing guns was very Magneto of her. I think it was. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a cool callback. Mark Kilhane sends in a super chat and says, maybe the kids are synthezoids like Vision and not actually human. No, I think they are mystically human. How that all works, I don't presume to know. But they are in the comics, so... Rita Senorita sends in a super chat and says, when Wanda points all the guns at the Sword Director, it's a callback to the scene when Magneto points all the guns at the cops in X-Men. I think it kind of is. You can't not think that, and I think it was very intentional. Beth Butcher sent it like father, like daughter. Beth Butcher sent in a super chat. Monica knew Nick Fury, so he's a possible cameo? I don't think so. Also, as a mom, the missing children is huge. If it's blown over, it'll really bother me. Beth? Oh, I don't think it's going to be blown over at all with Halloween coming. Phoenix Ridley sends in a super chat and says, in response to the earlier statement, Brian Braddock, thus Sister Betsy, was revealed in Endgame through subtitles, Peggy's conversation. That could be. I mean, I don't know if they're going to bring that in on this, but yeah, Betsy Braddock and Brian Braddock. That would be, they got to bring those characters in. I'd love to see that. Scuba Steve sends in a super chat. Ann and John, you are wicked awesome. If we send the Leafs into Westview, can Wanda create a reality where they become Stanley Cup champs? Go Leafs, go. I don't think she can, but we'll see. I would say go Leafs, go too. JMeister25 sends in a super chat. Is Feige a GOAT producer, getting me hyped in the show proper and things going forward for Marvel Studios? It's been this way nonstop for me since 2015. I think Feige is the GOAT. I think they know what they're doing. I think this show is making a statement about just how well thought out their universe is. And look at how much people are enjoying this thing. It's great. Windwalker 57 sends in a super chat and says, Evan Peters as Pietro. Didn't see that coming. I don't think anyone did, unless the people that spoiled it or you saw it, they did. But spoilers. I just hate the fact, I really do hate the fact people would spoil this show. Like, for what reason? The show is too cool. Don't spoil it. It's so not cool. Joe Leon says, call me crazy, but I'm betting on the Phoenix Force. It feels like Marvel is swinging for the fences. I think that's just too far. I think it's too far. I wouldn't like that. Plus, again, it diminishes what's going on with Wanda herself. Briggs6262 sends in a super chat and says, I really want to know how Sword got their hands on Vision's body when most of the big Avengers were still alive and it was in Wakanda. I think that they probably have some kind of a sharing deal. Wakanda and Sword, you know, they, because of extraterrestrial threats, I think Sword's pretty much buddies with all the intelligence organizations. I mean, remember, Vision was powered by the Mind Stone, which was an Infinity Stone from space, so maybe they asked for it. Brandon Barrett sends in a super chat and says, why do you keep saying Vision was in parts? Well, because you saw Vision was in parts in that surveillance tape that they showed, Sword showed at the briefing. Benjamin GL sends in a super chat and says, by the way, Dottie hadn't been introduced yet until Randall Park radios Wanda. Nothing special about Dottie. That's just why her profile wasn't on the board yet. Yeah, I know. I think that was an omission. We shall see what Dottie is up to. I'm a rebel Dottie, a loner. Movie Lingo sends in a super chat and says, hey, Wanda, Hey, Wanda. Hey, John. Wanda will lose her children when their two souls are reabsorbed. It will drive her insane. I think that it will set up the multiverse of madness. I don't think so. I think her kids are going to stick around because they become young Avengers. At least they did in the comics. Empire Fan 1980 sends in a super chat. I found it interesting that she was born in 1989, which makes her 2 years older than me, 31, which is her real life age. Fascinating. That's very curious. Juno Faulkner sends in a super chat and says, I believe that whatever entity is pulling the strings is trying to make Wanda want to stay in the Hex by filling it up with her deepest desires and adding Pietro, who is an extra way to keep her there longer until the kids grow up to the point that their powers fully manifest. I think that's a good bet. I think it's a good bet. T-Edge1 sends in a super chat and says, anyone notice the episodes reflect the 5 stages of grief? Anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I know. Also, over or under 30% that Wanda doesn't realize she's hurting people. I think it's over 30%. I think she doesn't realize she's hurting people. I think she doesn't realize a lot of things in this. Justice Shadow 82 sends in a super chat and says, Franklin Richards had those powers as a kid, and his mom isn't a reality warper. Wiccan and Speed don't need the exact same power set as the comics. I agree, but we'll see. I mean, again, I don't know how they're going to go. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is always drawn on the comics, but then made things a little bit different, put their own spin on them. Antoine Fair sends in a super chat and says, the engineer is Beast, and the mega reveal is Professor X. That, you know what? Could be. Again, I wouldn't put anything past them. But if it is Beast, and if it is Professor X, then is Quicksilver from our universe? I think it screws everything up. But I don't know. Naomi Ford sends in a super chat. With Wanda not being able to control children's minds, perhaps the other entity has the children in captivity. I think that's a good bet. We shall see. We shall see. Mark Kirkman sends in a super chat and says, hey, John, Evan Peters is the new Quicksilver. They're making it canon with the Fox films being canon with their own universe. Panels to Pixels podcast, #. Well, yeah, I think they are. I mean, they are making the multiverse. It's the multiverse. So I have no problem with that if that's what they're doing, but it's still not our MCU. So it's still somebody else's MCU, and I don't think Kevin Feige's happy to acknowledge a multiverse version of it, but they, I believe, would want to do their own too. Eric Dulukinski sends in a super chat. Thank you, Eric. Joshua Tabak sends in a super chat and says, could Dr. Doom be the doctor referenced by Monica? I don't think so. I don't think it's Dr. Doom. Sam Fisher sends in a super chat and says, could the engineer Monica mentioned be Talos? We know he's on Earth. We know Monica knows him, and I think Ben Mendelsohn would fit in the Luke category. I don't know if he would fit in the Luke category yet because we only know him from Captain Marvel, and I don't think that would be it. And the fact that we're expecting it, I think that would be kind of a letdown, actually. Raymond 2000 sent in a super chat and says, I think the aerospace engineer is a character called Blue Marvel, a.k.a. Adam Brashear. Monica and Adam have a history in the comics, and he fits that description. I disagree. I believe it's Fox's Pietro. Well, we'll see. It's not the same. There's another character coming. Connor Caden sends in a super chat. Connor again. Did you notice when Jimmy mentioned Captain Marvel, Monica wasn't pleased hearing her name? Many thoughts. Well, we've talked about that a lot. I do think that unfortunately the situation with Captain Marvel and Monica is Monica. It seems to me Captain Marvel let the family down. Let the family down. James sends in a super chat and says, could Monica's scan be Skrull related? I mean, there'll be a Secret Invasion show soon. All bets are off, although that would mean they're stuffing a lot into this show. Mark Kilhane says, wouldn't Fox's Quicksilver be much older now by now, given the two timelines? Well, yes. And it's very odd. So they're in an 80s sitcom, and he's basically the 80s version of Quicksilver. There's all kinds of wackiness happening here. But remember, they know what they're doing, so we shall see. Dean Dada sends in a super chat and says, I just love silently talking about this show, sitting alone with my friends. Thanks for being there, guys. Laugh out loud. I know. I can't stop thinking or talking about the show either. Matthew Carter sends in a super chat and says, "Hey, John, love your show. Just wanted to ask if you noticed how Monica seems to not be a Captain Marvel fan like at all. Do you think we'll get an answer why in this show, or do we have to wait for the Captain Marvel sequel?" You know what? I think there's no reason for them to necessarily answer that unless it becomes relevant. I think it's just a detail we'll pack away for another rainy day. Josh Bing sends in a $4.99 super chat and says, "Wanda saying, 'I don't know how all of this started,' still makes me think she had a psychotic break and didn't know it, but is currently in control." Josh, you could be right about that. For me, the jury's still out. I don't really know. Louise Pope sent in a super chat. Says, in Spider-Man 2, Fury isn't surprised at an alternate Earth. It may be Fox's X-Men is just one alternate universe among many, so they can be here and recast later. Oh, I agree with that. It is, after all, the multiverse, so there's many, many Earths. There's hundreds of Earths in the Marvel comic universe, so yes, we shall see. I agree with you, Louise. Or is it Louise or Louise? I guess it's Louise. It's Louise Pope. It's Louise Pope. So I agree with you, Louise. Jersey sends in a super chat and says, "What if Wanda was pregnant prior to Vision's death and the snap? She'd be 3 weeks pregnant at the start of the show. Her kids might just be real." Oh, I think her kids are supposed to be real. They might have been conjured up. It might be some kind of crazy immaculate conception or not immaculate, some kind of robot synthezoid conception, but I think they're real. Chaz McGill sends in a super chat and says, "In the words of Scott Lang and Ant-Man, maybe we should call the Avengers. I think we reached that point where this is an Avengers problem now. Thoughts?" Oh, I definitely think so, but I also think a group like SWORD is not going to want to call the Avengers at every moment. But I think, yes, I think we've now reached the point in the show where somebody's going to say, "Hey, are you going to call the Avengers? You might need some help." So I think you're right about that. Josh Bing says, "Couple that with a promo for next week where she keeps saying I'm fine. Maybe she was talking to a therapist for debriefing after the undusting. Could very well be. I think we're going to find that out." Ne'er-do-well sends in a super chat and says, "What if it's the kids bringing her brother to her? Billy Wiccan is no joke in the comics." Yeah, but how would they know that he exists? They know she died. I mean, they know. Well, they didn't. Maybe, I don't know, because they don't know. But why would they even know to look into a multiverse for another version of Pietro? So that's a question, but you never know. Brody Boxing sends in a super chat and says, "Any chance it could be Mojo?" I don't think so. That's going too far, even for them. Dean Dada says, and I like Mojo. You know, the Mojo verse is pretty cool. But then what are you going to bring in? Longshot and Spiral and everybody? Dean Dada says, let me find out Dag Agnes killed the dog and Scarlet Witch goes all John Wick on everybody. Could be. Mike Malkowitz says, "Why do they say that Wanda had no nickname? Obviously, it's Scarlet Witch in the comics, but maybe she hasn't earned the name in the MCU yet." No, she has not. She has no nickname in the MCU. That's why they said that. Richard Fairhurst sends in a super chat and says, "Peters can't be the Fox Universe Quicksilver unless they explain away the fact he hasn't aged 40 years since the 1980s in X-Men Apocalypse." Oh, but he did come from the 80s. That's why he was in the 80s version of that universe. I think absolutely that's all part of it. All part of the questions that we have. Very strange. Fire 3140 sends in a super chat and says, "Could the engineer be Forge from the X-Men?" Oh, no. No. That would be way too difficult to explain now. That's too deep. Mark Kilhane sends in a super chat and says, "Monica has a very similar reaction to Captain Marvel's name being mentioned as the Skrulls did in Far From Home." Yeah, it's true. And I think there's a reason. I think there's a lot of history, a lot of water under that bridge. Han Solo is back for justice. Mephisto appears as Evan Peters because he's aware of real-world Hollywood contracts, residuals, and loyalties. Just kidding. Laugh out loud. That's pretty funny. Corey Hainsley sends in a super chat and says, "Peters is missing informant. He's got the mobster accent. Total WITSEC persona." Witness protection program. That's pretty funny. Michael Botcher sends in a super chat and says, "I don't believe Peters is a misdirect. Like you said, the X-Men weren't doing well. Why would Feige misdirect knowing some haven't seen the Fox X-Men films?" Well, no, they that's the thing. They're presupposing you have. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has never been dumbed down to appeal to the lowest common denominator. They know people have seen the X-Men movies. Days of Future Past made a lot of money. So I do think it's actually the actual Quicksilver from the X-Men films over at Fox during the 80s. Matt Sanders sends in a super chat and says, do you think Agnes killed Sparky on purpose to test Wanda's or the boy's powers? I think she was definitely trying to, in the comics, Sparky dies in the same way. He does eat plants that kill him. So maybe that was real. When you're going to kill a dog, you got to be delicate about it. But they were directly referring back to Marvel Comics with that one. Adam Gibson sends in a super chat and says, Wanda has no control over her children. I think the twins could be behind the Stork, the power outage, the water, in utero magic, and Pietro. Thoughts? Adam, I think that's a very good plan. But again, how would they know what to be doing? They weren't even aware of reality yet and what it's like to be alive. So I don't know, but that's an interesting theory. Midnight Rider sends in a super chat and says, John, I believe the one major question that is important is why did her powers not work on the Stork as well as not working when trying to put the babies to sleep? Thoughts? Because I think the babies are autonomous in a way, and maybe she can't control them because they are mystical or something. That maybe that's the one, they're the one people that she can't because they are born of magic. Something like that. Scuba Steve sends in a super chat and says, I don't think either will happen, but what would be more Luke, like Magneto, Ian McKellen showing up as Grandpappy, or Hugh Jackman as Wolverine? Look, I think, you have to remember the story that's being told. And if Magneto shows up, whether it's Fassbender or Ian McKellen, it's part of the story of Scarlet Witch and Magneto and Quicksilver in the comics. So it makes sense. Whereas Wolverine's like, okay, it's Wolverine, that's cool, but what does Wolverine have to do with the story that's being told? Where Magneto would have a lot to do with the story that's being told. So Just Shadow sends in a super chat and says, Monica, I didn't say creation on the door. Director, oh, that's because Wanda stole our body we've been obviously using for the past 5 years. Off table. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Crazy. Richard Fairhurst sends in a super chat and says, if Peters is the Fox Quicksilver, he held up far better than his dad Magneto, who went from being Fassbender to being McKellen in the same time. Yeah, no, I agree. So I think it's Evan Peters. It's 80s Quicksilver. D Wild sends in a super chat and says, the engineer Monica is referring to as the little girl Skrull from the end of Captain Marvel grown up and as part of Sword impersonating, let's see where you are, D Wild, a human, and had her impersonate Pietro to give Wanda what she wanted from when she asked her the question outside the bubble, and Wanda, nothing. Yeah, but how would she know? Because that character is not from our universe. So how would she know? But it's interesting. Maybe something like that. I could see something like that, something along those lines be what's going on. Mario Gonzalez sends in a super chat and says, if Evan Peters is Mephisto, do you think that he's disguising himself as Aaron Taylor Johnson's Pietro in Wanda's eyes? Like that's what she's seeing from her point of view? Again, I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't think so. I would tend to say no. But again, you never know. R. Henry, 1980, says, I think Wiccan is the one that's aging both of them. Interesting. Could be. Maybe. Benjamin GL says, what if the scene where Cap goes back in time hasn't happened yet? There were construction crews in the background, so at least took place a week later. No, I think, well, maybe. I mean, it is 3 weeks out. No, I think it's probably before that. I think Cap went back in time before that. Before what's happening in WandaVision. Billy Morris sends in a super chat and says, John, I've been a freeloader of your great content for far too long until now. Well, thanks for the super chat. Thanks for supporting the channel. Do you think Norm is the missing informant? Dude legit flipped his lid for a second. Thanks for everything, John. I don't think so. I think there's much more to be revealed about what's going on. T-Edge1 sends in a super chat. Over or under 20% that Sword created MODOK to help during the blip, and that's who is influencing Wanda. Great show tonight. Can't wait for episode 6. T-Edge, you're a madman. I love you, but no. Don't think so. Joshua Tabak sends in a super chat and says, Wanda controls gun scene reminded me of Magneto. Yes, you're not the only one. I totally agree. Benjamin GL sends in a very generous super chat. Thank you much. Thank you so much, Benjamin GL. First week, I haven't given a $50 super chat for WandaVision. Shit. Also, how are the Sokovia Accords still a thing? What idiot thought that helped? I want Civil War II in 10 years where people actually deal with the failure of the first Accords. Well, at least you know your comics. You know what, Benjamin? Look, I think that the universe of the MCU is, especially after Wanda, it's been 5 years since the blip, and people are now coming back. The world is in a state of chaos. So I don't know if the Accords are in place or if they're the same or if they needed them or not. So I don't know, man. But it's a good question. Where are they at? But I want to thank you for supporting the channel generously like that. But I love that you Civil War II. You know, Captain Marvel, I didn't like Civil War II as much as I like Civil War I, though. The comics. L Cartoon sends in a super chat and says, Vision communicates with computers and is not telepathic. What if his awakening people is a computer thing and not magic? No, I think he's just tapping into their, like the human brain being like a computer. I think it's an electromagnetic response or something, so he's able to tap into that and free the people, or at least find out what's really going on. Jet Shadow 82 sends in a super chat and says, Transmuted D still made from dead D parts. Check. You're right. It's eesh. Ugh. Zam Master Artwork sends in a super chat and says, the next commercial, are you tired of your shoes not being able to keep up with your feet? Well, don't worry. There's always a silver lining with the new Athlete Pro shoes. Run so quick, no one will see you coming. That's pretty funny, Zam Master Artwork. I like that. Mike Malkowitz says, I'm wondering how Wanda can say she doesn't know how this started, but before it started, she stole the pieces of Vision's body. Yeah, no, she did. I don't think she knew maybe what she was going to do with them yet. Who knows? Maybe she found out that they've had Vision's body for like 5 years and didn't know that, got pissed and went and got him. Cinema Folks sends in a super chat and says, Wanda recognizes Pietro. How? Dude looks nothing like her brother. Don't say because of the hair of the jacket. That means give me some hair dye on Pietro. Yeah, I agree. I think she's confused. I think that she might know because of what she senses, because of her powers and the reality, but she doesn't know what's going on. I think, there's all of this is going to be revealed. All of it's going to be revealed. Ryan Steigerwald sends in a super chat and says, Wanda can't manifest Quicksilver's powers. So if Pietro starts moving at super speed, that should confirm it's actually a real version of him, right? Probably so. We'll see. Koa1708 sends in a super chat and says, Monica had a weird expression on her face when Captain Marvel's name was mentioned. Did something happen? Again, yep. And we just don't know what it is, but it's going to be revealed. Maybe, I don't think it's going to even be revealed in this show, but we're going to find out at some point. Benjamin GL sends in a super chat and says, email was General Sword email that made it thrust hex just like radio. It wasn't set to norm. It was at some level one Sword agent getting told to get coffee for his boss. Yeah, I see that. That email was just an email that got in there. I agree with you. Aaron Stewart sends in a super chat and says, do you think the mystery cameo could be another MCU recast? Maybe Ed Norton? Do you make anything of the constant appearance of the water tower? The water tower, it's always like, because that's clearly a studio water tower, but like when you go up into Northern California or up in Central California, there are water towers in towns. I've seen them. So I think it's just supposed to be part of Westview, but even though it's the studio backlot, but yeah. Baxter Kirkdoffer says, I know this may not be the MCU bringing the X-Men with Evan Peters, but I desperately want it to be. Yeah, I think they want their own X-Men, but they're being really cheeky about, using the multiverse. Just like we saw Flash, on the Flash TV show. The Flash from Justice League on the Flash TV show. So this multiverse thing, they're milking it. They're doing a good job. Glenn Taylor sends in a super chat and says, what if Mephisto is really dead and Agnes is using Wanda to bring him back, hence the dead dog trick? Could be. Again, all of these theories are great. It's just, we're going to have to wait and see. I don't have answers. I don't have answers. Cam K says, if you make a statue out of clay, is it still clay? If you make pants out of Kevlar, is it still Kevlar? So I agree with your theory on how Vision was made, but it's still dead Vision, right? Is it? I mean, if Wanda is creating children that are real with her mystical powers, why isn't the resurrected Vision real? Again, it's a tough one. T-Edge says, did Norm change actors? He doesn't look the same. No, I think it's definitely the same actor. Fidel Reyes says, Peter's character is named Peter, not Pietro in the X-Men movies. It's true. They gave him MCU Pietro's hair, which is very different, and wasn't brought in by Wanda. Like you, I believe Evan Peters is someone else. He could very well be someone else, but I think then why do that? Why even bring up the insinuation for the audience that this is Evan Peters from the Marvel universe? I think they're clearly opening this storyline up. It's going to move into Spider-Man 3, and it's going to move into it's like a miniseries. We're getting a trilogy. We're going to get the multiverse trilogy in Wanda, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange. And I think they're setting all of that up. Bughaw81 says, hi, John. Is there anything to the fact that each sitcom episode had a prominent animal moment? Lobster, bunny, stork, dog. Is it Ralph, the witness? I think there is something to that. I just don't think it's been revealed. I think there's so many layered details in here. We just don't know what they are. But again, I'm here for them. I think it's great. But I think you're onto something there. Hey, John, congrats on the new digs. 2 weeks ago, I said here that I believe Wanda is 75% in control. Well, after these past episodes, I believe she's now 90% in control, the other 10 being someone else. I agree. There's something else going on here. We don't know why or what, but there is absolutely something else going on here, and there is a force that has yet to be revealed. Not just a cameo, but there's a force, whether it's Mephisto or something else. KM Reviews sends in a super chat and says, the sheet with Norm's ID last episode, it mentions Vision waking him in the notes, but we don't see it till now. Is time flowing at a different speed in the hex? Why is an alarm going off the end? I think speed is absolute. Time is going in. It's absolutely. Well, I think what's going on in the hex isn't necessarily changing time, but time within the hex is being manipulated, or the time is going by. But when Wanda can instantaneously go from one era to another, I think time is actually moving the same, but she's manipulating what's going on all around them. Cam Reviews. Hello, Cam Reviews. The sheet with Norm's ID last episode, it mentions Vision waking him in the notes, but we don't see it till now. Oh, you already asked me that. See, is time flowing at a different speed in the hex? I just went back in time, KM. And an alarm's going off because I think that's signifying that Quicksilver breached the hex. The Turn sends in a super chat and says, Quicksilver could be the start of the multiverse being breached. I agree. Also, the twins could actually be real. Wanda could have been pregnant during Endgame. No, I don't think Wanda was pregnant during Endgame. I think all of this happened while they were there. It's all mystical powers. It all comes right out of the comic. L Cartoon says, if they squeezed in Spider-Man in Civil War last minute through production, they can squeeze some mutant stuff last minute too. I don't think anything about WandaVision is last minute. I think they've been thinking about this for a very long time. I think they know exactly what they're doing, and they're doing a great job with it. BW Rojas, or Rosas, says, I also feel Wanda, when it's all said and done, may end up as we first saw her in the mid-credits scene of Captain America Winter Soldier. Agree? Ooh, could very well be. That's not bad. Suthius sent in a super chat and says, hey, Mr. C, I definitely don't think Evan is X-Men's Quicksilver. In those movies, he's known as Peter, not Pietro. Also, his mannerisms are different. Could be. I don't know. But I think, why do that? Because the ramifications are too weird. Like, how would they know what he looks like? Why would they bring in somebody that it's clearly Evan Peters from the X-Men universe, Fox X-Men universe? We have to find out the why. Brazen Right sends in a super chat and says, thanks, John. I like hearing your ideas when you defend the opposite of them less. The conviction in your thoughts come through more to me. Thank you again. Well, I will tell him you said that. Isaac Valenzuela sends in a super chat and says, are all the residents just undusted and were unaware that Vision died during Infinity War, brought to WandaVision to not question him being there? Agnes, is Agnes, Agnes something Vision, better than, greater than? Agnes is greater than Vision in episode 6 promo, The Avengers, are you here to help us? We shall see. I mean, that's why I don't want to know. I don't want to know anything about what's coming on in these shows because, man, I don't want it to be ruined. I'm so enamored of this show. I can't wait to see where it's taking me. Benjamin GL sends in a super chat and says, don't believe this, but why would Feige bring in a failing X-Men universe? Someone had a really good idea. Well, I don't think of it as failing. I mean, if you look at it like X-Men 1, X-Men 2, Days of Future Past, there's been a lot of good X-Men movies, and I think the idea of the X-Men works, and I think Quicksilver was pretty much unassailably a great character. Everyone loved that Quicksilver, and it really plays into what's going on with Wanda. So I think it makes sense on a number of levels. Michael Shuey sends in a super chat and says, hi, John, longtime viewer, but first-time writer. Well, thank you. Love the show. While I started off skeptical, WandaVision has risen to my top 5 MCU favorites. You know what? If it sticks the landing, I think it's going to be one of everybody's favorites. I'm loving it just because it's so well done. It's so interesting. Matthew Kraft sends in a super chat and says, could Rambo become Photon if she goes back into Westview with the machine they talked about? I think, why not? Why not? Michael Shuey goes on and says, episode 5 has only underscored that for me. I have a theory idea about how the 9 episodes might end. Doctor Strange joined by Charles Xavier. Maybe, could be, but we'll have to find out. I don't know if they're going to go that far. Because again, I think if they bring in Quicksilver works because he's part of Wanda's mythology. Long time established mythology. All the other stuff is not. So I would ask people when they come up with theories, think about the show itself. What is this show about? And what relates back to what's actually happening? That's why I don't think someone like Hugh Jackman would show up. But then again, I wouldn't put it past him. I don't know. Cam K sends in a super chat and says, the MCU is getting tons of supers, and Thanos ain't around to balance that. Do you think we're going to get a lot of the older heroes' deaths while they introduce new ones? Love the show, John. No, I don't think so, because we're getting a lot of heroes, but the universe is expanding, literally expanding. We're going out into space, the multiverse, all kinds of stuff. Oh, wait, I see what you're saying. Michael Shuey said, episode 5 has only underscored that for me. I have a theory idea about how the 9th episode might end. Doctor Strange, joined by Charles Xavier, knocks on Wanda's front door. When she opens it, she asks why they're there. After a pause, Xavier responds, we're here to help, Wanda. I like that as an idea, but then what happens? I think this show's going to end badly. Michael goes on to say, the screen goes black. While certainly far-fetched, I think it'd be compelling, if not a maddening way to end the season. No, I think they're going to end this. I think this is going to be the very beginning of a trilogy that this is going to end badly. I don't know if that means people are going to die, but it's going to end in dire straits, I think. But then again, how dire can it be if or maybe you think it's going to end, but then it's going to come back and bite us in the ass? Because we know Spider-Man Far From Home, J. Jonah Jameson, I think that means something too. Elkhart, and maybe reality is unwinding, the fabric of reality. It starts unwinding in a small way at the end of the show, but then totally unravels. I mean, it's hard to say. I'm not entirely sure. Suthius says, is it just me, or does Agnes seem like she's exhausted trying to make sure she's ready for anything that Wanda may need at any moment? I think you're right. Just so that Wanda stays happy and doesn't keep redoing everything. I think you're absolutely right about that. And I think there's a lot to that, because remember, Agatha Harkness in the comics counseled Wanda, so it makes sense. Maybe we all think she's bad, but she's really trying to help. El Cartoon sends in a super chat and says, note, I don't want the Fox stuff getting folded into Marvel. Just saying, if Kevin wanted, he could make it happen. I don't think he wants to. I think he's using it very effectively, but I don't think he wants to make it all one thing. Windwalker sends in a super chat and says, director has his reasons, but what did he think a drone missile and some guys with guns were going to do to Scarlet Bleepin' Witch? You're right, Windwalker. I think that, look, remember, this situation, they're trying to figure it out. They don't know. They don't know what's going on. No one's ever seen anything remotely similar to this. It's crazy, and it's been 3 weeks since people were blipped back. So the world is everyone's in a tizzy here, and then they're dealing with this. They're dealing with this crazy situation. It's crazy. Benjamin GL sends in a super chat and says, stop saying the twins are immaculate conception. Anne was right. Wanda was already pregnant 100%. I don't think so. Pregnant with whom? I mean, remember, Vision died in Infinity War. And, but, yeah, I don't think so. I think it's all mystical. All this has been going on. But maybe. I could be wrong. Termite 30 sends in a super chat and says, I think Monica was texting Blue Marvel. Could be. A lot of people have said that. That could very well be the case. Who knows? El Cartoon sends in a super chat and says, the Mind Stone gave Wanda powers, but she's altering reality and creating life. Could she be channeling other stone powers, reality and the Soul Stone? I don't know about that. I mean, her powers are to change reality, but I don't think she's channeling other Infinity Stones. Juan Diaz sends in a super chat and says, Professor X has to be the big reveal toward the end. Might be the only telepath that can stop her. Thoughts? I don't know. She's magic. You know, it's not just telepathy. She's magic. So Ardent Defender sends a super chat in and says, the Infinity Stones cannot be destroyed. They existed before creation of the MCU universe. Thanos just physically removed them from a tangible existence. Yeah, you might be right about that. You absolutely might be right about that. Bad Gamer sends in a super chat and says, the alarm in the sword base goes off at the same time Evan Peters showed up, the same way it goes off when Monica and Wanda exit Westview. Yeah, I think it's pretty well established that he's probably breached the hex at that point. Devin A sends in a super chat and says, maybe Wanda stole Vision's parts to keep Sword from using them to build a weapon, but once she got them, this other sinister force lured her into this. I think you're onto something there, Devin. I think that could be true. BW Rojas says, just thought of this. What if the lab footage is fake, made to look like it's all Wanda? Also, if it's Mephisto, he's known to prey on the mentally fragile. Perhaps that's what's going on with Wanda. I think absolutely that could be absolutely be a part of it. I think you're right about that. There's clearly somebody is taking advantage of Wanda's depleted mental state. Joe 44571984 sent in a super chat and says, WandaVision is basically an MCU adaptation of the Marvel Comics series House of M. That's exactly what they do. They look back into these things, and it's literally a house of M. It's her house, and it keeps changing. So absolutely, I think you're absolutely right about that. It's just in a different form. Empire Fan 1980 sends in a super chat and says, you were talking about Kevin Feige making a deal with a crossroad demon, maybe Crowley. Now I want to cross over with Supernatural. Could be. Not going to happen, though. The Craven Corporation sends in a super chat and says, all this transmuting material by Wanda, getting some awesome Full Metal Alchemist vibes. Human transmutation to create her kids is super dark. So super dark. But again, right out of the comics. Lanieric sends in a super chat and says, do you think it's possible that the villain behind all of this will actually be revealed to be Mojo, and he's the one show running WandaVision to watch himself? I like that. I don't think that's true, but I do like where you're going with that. That would be so weird meta, but most people don't know. They don't know who that is. And that's the thing. Most casual viewers, Mojo's too much of a deep dive. We know who that is, but most people aren't going to know who that is. Benjamin GL sends in a super chat and says, Reed Richards being the engineer seems like the kind of thing Kevin Feige would retcon after the fact into canon if possible. Absolutely could definitely be, but I don't know. We shall see. We're going to find out. Glenn Taylor sends in a super chat and says, if it turns out the dog belongs to John Wick, Agnes is in a lot of trouble. Yes, she is. John Demoto sends in a super chat and says, I hated the reintroduction of Quicksilver. This means she can bring any person back to life. That means there's no stakes if all the deaths in the MCU can be undone. But she didn't bring him back to life. The Quicksilver that we saw is from an entirely different universe. So it's not Evan Taylor Johnson. It's not her Quicksilver. The real question is, where did he come from? I don't think she can undo any deaths. Tyler V602 sends in a super chat and says, I'm leaning towards Magneto showing up due to Quicksilver wanting to tell him he's his son, which could lead into them being brother and sister. Yeah, but it's a different reality. You know, it's a whole different Our Quicksilver is not, Evan Taylor Johnson is the MCU Quicksilver. And they were raised as twins. Their parents were killed. It's different than what happened with Evan Peters. Is from a totally different universe that should never have been part of our universe. So we'll see where they go. Akil P says, I have a theory which links to Days of Future Past. When Wolverine goes to the past in 1980, they came to contact Quicksilver, and Pietro is real from the 1980 timeline. Wolverine stuck there too. Oh my God. You know what? That's a pretty good idea. I like that idea, but wow. My head is spinning now. Head is spinning. William Nelson Jr. sends in a super chat and says, keep up the good work. Well, thank you. We will try. Scuba Steve sends in a super chat and says, the more the refurbished Vision becomes aware, the less Wanda can control him. She's losing control of Revision, her kids, and now she has a twin brother from a different mother. Are her powers being drained by creating a family? Oh, I think they absolutely are, Scuba Steve. I think you're really onto something there. Yeah, the more that she's putting this out there, the more it's brutal for her. John Demoto sends in a super chat and says, the MCU doesn't need X-Men. Endgame is the highest grossing movie of all time without X-Men. Yeah, but the X-Men are a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, they're of the Marvel Universe. They're cornerstone characters, and I think that Marvel wants to bring them into the realm and give their own spin on them because they are so important to the Marvel franchise. So I think, but you're right. They didn't need the X-Men, but I think they want the X-Men because they have a bunch of stories they want to tell. Gretchen A sends in the super chat and says, maybe someone already said this, but is it possible the engineer is Riri Williams, a.k.a. Ironheart? It would make sense with the Young Avengers. I don't think so. I mean, it could be because they are setting up the Young Avengers with Wanda's kids. But I don't know if they would. Again, that's piling a lot on top of things, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. Interesting idea, though. Cousin Marcus sends in a $5 super chat and says, best part of the episode was how casual they presented Vision telling Wanda that he talked to Norm. Super important conflict that started so normal. I agree. All of this stuff is really percolating to a head. Mr. Murder Nichols sends in a super chat and says, forget the Soul Stone. Is she manipulating the Reality Stone? No, I think she's just using her powers. I mean, just like in House of M when she changed all of reality. And that's what she did. Akil P says, continuation to above. Even Peters is the version of Pietro from the 1980 timeline, and it's a misdirection. Yeah, but no one knows that timeline again. I mean, we'll have to see. I don't know. I don't know, but I think that, remember, that's a totally different reality. Somebody had to have reached through the multiverse and plucked him from that particular place, which ties back to them knowing then where Wanda is at in her own little sitcom universe. They knew she worked her way up to the 80s and made that decision. I mean, I don't know what's going on, but it's pretty amazing. B. Cunning sends in a super chat and says, why don't you believe the historic popularity of the X-Men and stars like Fassbender, Jackman, and J-Law could be appealing to Feige? I think they are. Don't you think under his vision direction it could be successful? Yeah, but I think they want to start anew. I think Feige really wants, those are actors, like you said, they're great, people like them, but I think he wants to start anew and fresh and reimagine, just like they reimagined Spider-Man for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think they want to do the same thing with the X-Men. Benjamin GL says, remember when people said nothing would make people care about the MCU after Endgame because they got closure? Those people were dumb. WandaVision is better than Endgame and second only to Infinity War. Well, we'll see. Those are big words, Benjamin. But I love the fact you're right. People are caring. I'm caring. I mean, I can't wait to see where this is all going to go. Devon A says the cameo is Dominic Toretto who saves the day. Well, you never know. I'm hoping to see a Fast 9 Super Bowl trailer. Is there one out yet? I don't know. I haven't seen it. I haven't looked, but maybe tomorrow. Noel Martinez sends in a super chat and says, Agnes brings a doghouse for a puppy that mysteriously shows up that ends up dying in her yard. She's trying to trigger something in those kids. Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Connor Williams sends in 1374 super chat and says, I think Hayward wants Wanda's children as sentient weapons. Remember that Monica tells Hayward the sword stands for observation and response, not creation. I agree, but I don't know if anybody would have thought, Sword didn't know what was going on, or at least maybe they do, but this is so weird and outlandish. I don't think any Earth forces could have planned something like this. Peter Vincent Catulio says, do you think an Eternal is at play here? I don't, but maybe the ramifications of the Eternals might have something to do with this. But I don't think so, although, because the Eternals was already supposed to have come out. Well, maybe. Maybe. Not a bad idea. Abel Leon sends in a super chat and says, in episode 4, if you stop at the right time, it talks about everything that happened in episode 5 where Vision wakes him up. Norm is pleading for help, so does that mean at least Sword knows Vision isn't the same from the others? Was it an error from Marvel or more likely foreshadowing episode 5? I think it was foreshadowing. I think so. Maybe. Mr. 47 says, both Paul and Elizabeth's acting in this episode was amazing. They've really grown into these roles, and I'm glad these shows can finally let other Avengers and their actors have time to shine. I couldn't agree with you more. They're both so good. It's so great to see this focusing on them. I mean, no wonder these actors are agreeing to be in these shows, because they're beautifully, beautifully made. They're beautifully constructed. There's a lot for these actors to really do, to tear into. I mean, actors want great parts, and this show is giving them those parts to play. Peter Vincent Catulio says, I hate waiting, but WandaVision's weekly format worked because fans have a week to talk and theorize about it. Will a weekly format work with other Marvel series that aren't as mysterious and weird? I think so. I think they're going to make these shows. They have really thought about these shows. I think they're going to be high drama. I think it's really cool what they're doing. I think they really know, and it's going to be awesome. And we win because we're the audience. Hudson Productions sends in a super chat and says, John, isn't it kind of weird that WandaVision takes place in New Jersey, where Mrs. Marvel will be set in the future? No, I don't think so. Close to New York, Hi, John, big fan. Going with your theory that Vision was created by the parts of the body of Vision. Is this the way they bring back Vision? When he walks out of Westview, he stays alive? Again, these things have, this is right out of the comics. So I think so. I think, yeah, I do. Valentin Vasilev sends in a super chat and says, I'm thinking Wanda is being influenced in some way because she recognized Pietro even when he's not the same guy, and the fact that it was mentioned on the outside. I think that she senses it. He's from a totally different reality, and if nothing else, she can sense that. And she can also sense that he is a version of her brother, I think. Andrew Villarreal sends in a super chat and says, I think Agnes killed the dog to upset the children to get them to age up again. I agree. I think that was all part of that plan. Stupid Stars Music sends in a super chat and says, there's a caption narration where they say Pietro is from the Fox Cinematic Universe on Disney+. I thought it was interesting. Big fan, John. Go Brady. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, even though I said not a fan of Brady, I want to see him win tomorrow. I do. I think it'd be great. Just a history. Him and Gronk. Come on. Mark Blaza sends in a super chat and says, take your pick, Baby Groot. Take your pick. Baby Groot, Baby Yoda, or Baby Vision. I'm going to take Baby Vision. I love Vision. Abel Leon sends in a super chat and says, Monica definitely has some type of power, but more like protection. Mutant. Also, her shooting her clothes reminded me when Peggy shot Cap's shield. I know, right? Yeah, we're going to see. Is she going to be Photon? I think so. It's all good. Edward Nelson sent in a super chat and says, the Luke Skywalker level cameo is Mark Hamill as Mephisto. Why not at this point? Anything goes. Iwansu. That's Indiana Jones. That's Paramount. Can't sing that. But you're right. I wouldn't be surprised. Akil P says, wait. What if Kevin is using WandaVision to remove mutants by saying iconic "no more mutants" from that universe? Plot hole of why they would do that, but an interesting thought. It is an interesting thought, but again, the MCU so far is mutant pure. And the twins got their powers from the Infinity Stone, so theoretically no mutants. I think they're saving them, but they're definitely... something's going on here. Something's percolating. So we will see. Stupid Stars Music says it's for who can't see, so they narrate, I think. Oh, yeah, that's right. That'd be interesting to go in and look at that, where they got that from. Closed captioning as spoiler information. Nicholas Spellman sends in a super chat and says, I think Wanda's brother called him a popsicle because maybe he can see that Vision is actually dead, and it was a reference to that and not a bomb pop. Could very well be. Could very well be. That's funny. Or just somebody who was dead and in suspended animation on ice. Tyler Pfeiffer says, would Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn be a Luke Skywalker level surprise? Maybe he's introduced here to set up Spider-Man 3 if the multiverse is a thing. I think whoever's going to show up at the end of this show is going to have something to do with the story at hand. Remember, the story at hand, it's WandaVision, it's her story, and it's their story, and what's happening is always going to relate back to them. And they're not just going to throw in a cameo for a cameo's sake. It's all going to relate to the bigger story. Alex Von Gollum says, hi, Gio. Do you think Doctor Strange saw this happening as part of the 14,605 scenarios? Maybe he thought the restoration of the universe was worth the upcoming problems, deciding to deal with them later. I like that thought. I don't think so, but I like the way you think. I like the way you think. Could be, but no, because he was actually looking at the battle for Thanos. He didn't have time to look at anything else. Jason A says, this reminds me of Iron Man 3. After the epic badass hero moment, we dive into the traumatic aftermath, only it does so even better. I agree with you. I like Iron Man 3, but I think this is doing a much better job of dealing with that kind of trauma. Benjamin's Highlights sent in a super chat. Hate that there are spoilers out there. Benjamin, you and I both. The people that want to spoil this show are dicks. I mean, it's just a dick move. The show is so interesting and so much fun that we have people spoiling it. I mean, I know it's a product of the modern age and people are like, I've got this information, but it's so rude. It's just, the show is too good to get spoiled. King Andre sends a super chat in and says, my theory is that Scott Lang will be the engineer that Monica is referring to so that he can build the machine that gets them inside the Hex. Maybe. But they already know him. You know, she just say, why can't I call Ant-Man? You know. Richard Fairhurst sends in a super chat and says, Vision was not in 100 pieces. Wanda blew Vision up, but Thanos reconstituted him and just ripped out the stone from his indestructible head. Well, that's true, but I think they probably took him apart. Peter Vincent Catulio says, what sitcom will it be for the 90s? Friends? Seinfeld? How about the 2000s and 2010s? I don't know if they're going to keep that up, by the way, because I think the reality of that is going to come tumbling down. Risk It for the Biscuit sends in a super chat and says, the closed captions for the episode point out that this is Quicksilver from the Fox movies. Yeah, I would agree with that because, you know, especially if it's closed captioning and you can't see, they'd have to be very, very clear so you knew. Mr. 47 says, plus it's just nice to see Evan again. He has such a likable presence, even if he doesn't end up being who he appears to be at first glance. Oh, I think he is. I think he is. But I agree with you. It is nice to see him again. Travis Hawkinson sends in a super chat and says, what if Wanda's kids, after hearing about her brother, brought him back, but you can't bring the dead back, hence Pietro from a different dimension? Could very well be. That could be part of it, too. Again, it's all speculative now. I love the speculation, but I kind of like that. I think that, like the monkey's paw kind of an idea. I mean, the person can't come back, but so we'll give you one from another dimension. Alex Von Gollum, I mean, the multiverse of madness. All of this is beginning, whatever that's leading up to, we are seeing the origins of it now. Alex Von Gollum sends in a super chat and says, it was agonizing for me to see any scene of Wanda with her children and their bond strengthening. It's very likely something tragic will happen to them. I don't know if something tragic is going to happen to them because in the comics, they become part of the Young Avengers. Wiccan and Speed grow up to be pretty cool characters, so we'll see. But I do think the show's going to end on not a good note. It's going to be a cliffhanger, and it's going to be like, uh-oh. I think it's going to be bad. Peter Vincent Quatilio says, is it canon in the MCU that Wanda received her powers from an Infinity Stone, or people in the MCU just think that, but in reality she's an undiagnosed mutant? Right now, mutants don't exist. Well, in the Marvel Comics, she is a mutant. So, and she's the daughter of Magneto. Well, until that was retconned, I mean, but, you know, part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Tim L. sent in a super chat. The cameo will be John Krasinski. Could very well be. I mean, if it is Doctor Strange, if it is Reed Richards, it could very well be. And wouldn't that be, I mean, again, if Kevin Feige wasn't cool enough, that would be a triumph for him. Abel Leon sends in a super chat and says, so as acting director, he didn't immediately get the video of Wanda stealing Vision. What is Sword hiding? Ultron 2? He knows more than he's letting on. Oh, I agree. I totally agree with that. Jordan Risley sends in a super chat and says, what if Wanda brought in Pietro subconsciously? There are new rumors, and the new rumors true about Willem Dafoe being seen on the Spider-Man 3 set. Oh, I believe that, but that's a different thing entirely. I just think that whoever's going to show up, if there's some remaining gigantic cameo, it's going to work within this story of WandaVision, of Wanda herself. Manny Garcia sends in a super chat and says, Wanda was able to steal Vision, control the town, take in and take out Monica since coming back from the snap all in 9 days. Well, it's been 3 weeks. The timeline seems off for me. In episode 4, Norm's character sheet already described the scene from episode 5 with Vision in the office, which means in episode 4, Sword had already seen that part. Well, yeah, but I mean, well, I guess there's time issues I think they're going to probably have to grapple with or deal with. I think we're going to understand them. But yeah, it is all of this is very weird. It's happening very, very fast. Jeffrey Solomon sends in a super chat and says, Illuminati seeds planted, Monica, Strange, potential Xavier showing up, Namor reference in Endgame. Thoughts? Well, again, you know, the Illuminati is a big part of the Marvel comic universe. It's a big ask, and they might be planting those seeds, and this might be one of the things that leads to the Illuminati being formed, but I think you're asking a lot. Remember, the movie audience doesn't know what that is yet, so we shall see. AJC sends in a super chat and says, here's my wishful thinking. I would love for Clint to show up, even though they would never focus too heavily on it. Well, he's got his own show, but you never know. Clint has been a father figure mentor to her. He got her to focus in Age. He showed up to break her out in Civil War, and grieved with her at the end of Endgame. For me, it would make sense to call him in to reach out to her. That's probably true. I think that's a good idea. But again, you know, we know that there's going to be a Hawkeye show, and Hawkeye is around. He was a big part of Endgame, so he's only, you know, this is only 3 weeks after Endgame, so there's no reason why they couldn't call him. They're going to have to call some of the Avengers. Someone's got to get a call, and it can't be Ghostbusters. Cam K says, what if Ralph is dead like Vision and Agnes's goal is to bring him back in some way? So we have 2 grieving witches, and it could explain why everyone is feeling her pain, but no one has specified Wanda. I think it's a really good idea because Agatha Harkness does counsel her in the comics. AJC sends in a super chat and says, oh no, I already read that one. Mr. Murder Nickel says, calling it now, Stan Lee comes back as the one above all. We already know that no one stays dead in the MCU. Rest in peace. And we know he's hanging out with Watu, the Watcher, so maybe he can come back. Boy, Kevin Feige would really know his shit if that were to happen. Jack Butler sends in a super chat and says, hey, John, been a fan since 2016 at Collider. If you were to bet money on an established Avenger showing up, who would it be? I'd put money on Hawkeye. Well, I think someone's got to show up from the Avengers. Somebody does. Jivey15 says, isn't Peters Isn't Peters the second other universe actor to play his character? J.K. Simmons was the first in Far From Home. Right, and that's 8 months, 7 months and change after this happens. So I think that was the first manifestation we've seen of the reality rip that leads into Spider-Man 3 and the Multiverse of Madness. So Wanda is actually a prequel to Far From Home. Quinspiration Live sends in a super chat and says, Episode 4 opens with Monica's last train of thought being Carol's dialogue. Could the distance Monica shows today be due to that moment being Monica's last memory of seeing Carol? A reach, maybe. Could be. I don't know if that's going to play into the show. I think they're just setting up a future conflict, maybe, or that we know something went down with them. I don't know if that's going to be part of it at all. Major K sends in a super chat and says, has your needle moved ever so slightly on Olsen getting award attention? I know it's early to tell, of course, but she may be in the conversation officially now. She's done amazing work. I would be very surprised if she's not nominated for an Emmy for this. Both of them maybe, but she's just been crushing it. I think she's absolutely in the conversation. The Everything Nerd sends in a super chat and says, what if the season finale Mephisto reveal, villain of the Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, WandaVision trilogy, Spider-Man made a deal in the comics with Mephisto? I think that's a possibility. I think that's a possibility. I do. I think you're right about that. Maybe. Shh, don't tell anyone, though. Jax Raback says, I believe there's a big bad that sets everything in motion, but Wanda ultimately destroys them, emerging as Scarlet Witch, our next big villain. Oh, I think that's true, but I don't think she destroys the villain. I think this villain's going to move forward into something else. Could be wrong, but you never know. JMeister25 sends in a super chat and says, listen to Billie Jean by Michael Jackson and compare the lyrics with fake Vision's point of view regarding a child or children. It's a fun connection. Oh, man, now I got to go listen to that song. But I love that you said that. I think you're probably right about that. Cam K sends in a super chat and says, Mephisto as Evan Peters' Quicksilver could be because Wanda would catch on to the fact that Aaron's Quicksilver is way too dead to be reanimated as opposed to Vision's corpse, which was much preserved. Yeah, there's some really wacky stuff going on here. And it ain't going to be good for Wanda when she finally puts everything together. It's a creep fest. I love the fact that next week's episode deals with Halloween because we got reanimated corpses. We got dead guys coming back from different universes who didn't really die in their universe. There's a lot of creepy stuff going on, so I can't wait. Shani Jean says, there's no way Disney had her murder a town full of children. I think she sent them somewhere safe, but she'll be full villain before she can reveal. Did everyone notice her accent returned? Well, after this show, I can honestly say we did notice her accent return, but you're right. She is going to go full villain. I believe it. K Major sends in a super chat and says, I better see the Seinfeld restaurant in the next episode or the Friends Cafe. Which do you think we'll see? I think we're going to see, Friends. I think we're going to go Friends. The Iceman 1014-18 sends in a super chat and says, man, this episode was insane. Still on the Mephisto theory. Agnes, though clearly not Agatha. The twins are clearly different. The Stork was from them. Maybe. We'll see. I don't know about that, though. J Meister sends in another super chat. Star Wars has incest. Marvel has necrophilia. What the hell, Disney? Y'all need to stop earning my respect. Yeah, there's some creepy stuff. I remember when they were first talking about bringing Scarlet Witch and stuff, and I was like, I wonder if they're going to do the Vision, and I'm like, I wonder if they're going to fall, if Disney's going to, are they going to get married? How's Disney going to handle that with the kids? Boy, I never would have thought. Wow. Mandy Garcia sends in a super chat and says, never mind, just remembered she was snapped, so everything is still fresh for her still. How big is Elizabeth Olsen's star power after this show? She's knocking it out of the park. She's killing it. She's crushing it, and it's great. K Major sends in a super chat and says, I think someone masquerading as Wanda infiltrated S.W.O.R.D. If it truly was her, I want to know what finally set her off. No Avengers present, alone, and weird. Yeah, there's got to be some explanation, and maybe it was mystical. Maybe it wasn't her who took the body. Who knows? I don't know. RODV66 RODV66 says, what if whatever Wanda did to Agent Franklin transforms him into the villain Swarm? I mean, that could happen, but I think, again, you've got to remember, the story does have a focus. It does have a focus to it, and a good focus. And I think we have to think about what that focus is. Cam K said, "Why did Herb not need to be awakened?" Good question. I don't know. Or did he? Casey McNatt says, "Did anybody notice when Norm said, 'she's in my head', he never once said who she was?" Oh, yes. People have noticed. Casey goes on to say, "Of course, we're to expect Wanda, but what if it was Agnes Dottie making everyone believe it was Wanda doing this? And also Wanda has said she didn't know how all this started. So what if Wanda is possessed when she broke into Sword headquarters and stole Vision's body?" I think she probably was. I think all that was probably someone's plan to prey on her emotions. Ross Pitt, Shark Hunter, sent in a super chat. Thank you. "I want this show to end in something no other Marvel project would dare do, a big show-stopping musical number." Well, Ross Pitt, Shark Hunter, if that happened, would any of us be surprised? Mr. 47 sends in a super chat and says, "How does Wanda know right away that Evan is her brother?" We know because we watched X-Men, but she didn't. He didn't say he was until she assumed. I think she felt it. I mean, those people from other realities, you never know what's going to happen. But I think that's probably why. Daniel Moody sends in a super chat and says, "I want the show to climax with Doctor Strange portaling Xavier into the universe so he can telepathically talk Wanda down from causing a catastrophe." I don't think they're going to do that. Too easy. Esteban Arriaga sends in a super chat and says, "WandaVision is the closest we've gotten to an MCU Dark Phoenix storyline. It's awesome." I agree, Esteban. I think it's really cool, and I don't think that is lost on anyone over at Marvel. They're like, we're going to do Dark Phoenix in our own way, and it's going to be great. Arun Babaraj says, awesome episode. Marvel literally opened the door for the X-Men. Not many people talk about the production quality and the FX work for this series. They have changed the TV landscape. Looking at you, CW. Oh, this show is a very expensive show, but it is unbelievably awesome. You are totally correct. It is so good. They have raised the bar so high for this show. It's incredible. Empire Fan 1980 sends in a super chat and says, "So Vision was born in Westview, born and raised in a playground, and he spent most of his days there." Yeah, it's true. Michael Wright sends in a super chat and says, "Not only did she lose Vision twice, but the first time it happened, she was the one to do it. Then Thanos brings him back just to kill him again, making her needing to kill him pointless." Yep, that's right. And no wonder she's got grief problems. Preston Bell sends in a super chat and says, "John, clarification on my earlier comment. What I meant about Vision's chili bowl is his funky haircut. It kind of took me out of the show for a second." I know, right? His haircut's been hilarious. Also, I meant Peters when I said Rivers. Absolutely. But you're right about that haircut. Eric O'Quinn sends in a super chat and said, Could the twins have brought Quicksilver as they've never seen him? Maybe that's why he looks different." No, I think that's an early manifestation of whatever's going on with that multiverse. That's what's happening. Al Rencha sends in a super chat and says, "How about Hank Pym as the engineer? He made something that was able to enter the quantum realm." Could very well be. We're going to find out. And that, my friends, what an epic bunch of questions this was. Wow, when John asks me to do something, I always forget how big a task that can be. I want to thank all of you for sticking with me here. It's been great fun answering these questions. I always love it when John gives me the opportunity to do this. In case you forgot, my name is Robert Meyer Burnett. You can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. Find me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnettwork, and its adjacent website, theburnettwork.net. You can actually send me letters to be read on my own show at theburnettwork.net on that website. Check it out. This has been a lot of fun. You guys have a lot of really compelling questions. I think what's really cool about this whole thing, is how engaged and fired up the fan base is. I mean, I love seeing this. This show, this is what great genre, whether it's science fiction, fantasy, horror, comic book related. The fact that this show is so well made, it's so thought-provoking, it's so compelling, it's so beautifully constructed. I mean, what a gift that we have in getting this kind of programming. I know the pandemic in 2020, I feel like we were all blipped in 2020, but the fact that we get a show like WandaVision with this much interest and this much passion I'm on the edge of my seat just like you all are, and I think it's fantastic. It's so cool that we live in a time where we're getting something this compelling, and how interesting is it that it's so different than what we might have expected, and yet now we're so invested because it's like, what the hell is going on? And I think, I always say it. I've said it on the show for a long time. We live in very interesting times, and we should feel very lucky that we do so. I was very lucky that John asked me to do this. I was hopefully you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun doing it. Boy, it's a long one, but definitely worth it. And hopefully we'll be doing this. I mean, is this going to be a weekly thing for the next 4 weeks? I don't know if I can live. I don't know if I can handle it. But anyway, it was great. Thank you to John Campea. Thank you to Ann Campea. And thank you to everybody that works or has ever worked for me and will ever work for me in whatever multiverse I find myself in. Looking forward to seeing you more on watching us on the John Campea Show. So there you go. And I don't know what to say, except, I don't know. What do you think I should say? Are you going to put a spell on me? Maybe she will. She's a dangerous woman. Watch out.